dissent. The bill is almost certainly to be approved today. Recapping the top story, Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sihle Zikalala has led a delegation of about 50 people to George in the Western Cape to visit the site of the collapsed building. The death toll in the tragedy was last night reported at 32, with 20 workers unaccounted for. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, soccer, Royal AM are aiming to halt Mamelodi Sundowns' unbeaten streak in tonight's DStv Premiership Showdown at the Harry Gwala Stadium. And John Duran's late heroic snatch Aston Villa a 3-3 draw against Liverpool, keeping their Champions League hopes alive. Details just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Good news. Well, good and bad news. It's a mixed bag from the KZN region this morning. The earlier truck crash, which closed the N3 for hours overnight last night, has been cleared, but it's resulted in a backlog of truck traffic now moving through en masse to Durban. So there's a backlog from Sadara all the way down to Town Hill, and those trucks, as they arrive into the construction zone south of Pietermaritzburg, some of them will inevitably break down. There'll be a high volume anyway of trucks, regardless if they break down or not, moving from Pietermaritzburg down through Ashburton and on through to the works around Camperdown. So just factor in a busy run through from Pietermaritzburg to Durban this morning. Major backlog of truck traffic to clear through there. Gauteng looking all right. The R21, if you're on your way for flight connections, it's okay at Clayville at this stage, but it will start to backlog into the roadwork shortly. Driving into Cape Town, the N2 looking a bit busy between the airport and Jan Smuts Drive in the Pinelands area. And motorists driving in the Eastern Cape, the 396 route is focus of our attention this morning. The road closed north of Solo towards Maclear due to protesting. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad that you're along with us this Tuesday morning. You just get a sense of things beginning to kind of move in interesting ways ahead of the election. I say that because President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday, confirmation from the presidency, he's going to sign the NHI bill into law in what's described as a public ceremony tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. And I think there have been one or two bills that have been signed into law publicly. The last one that I remember was actually a change to the Constitution to make sign language an official language. That was a public ceremony. That was a change to the Constitution, though, but I think it's a sign of our pre-election times. Do I call it that? That the NHI bill is going to be signed into law in public. And I think there'll be all sorts of conversations around how it's going to play out and what happens from here. I mean, you listen to some people and they think it's Armageddon, the end of the world. You listen to some people and they think it's the beginning of a whole new, brave new world, that everything's going to be much better from here. And there are very few things that have divided us, I think, as much as the NHI bill. And you can understand why, because it would basically allow anyone to go to any hospital. Government would fund it, and it has to be paid for somehow. It's a sort of typical kind of poor versus rich kind of debate. In some ways, it's a lot more complicated than that. I really am oversimplifying it. I'll tell you what worries me is a little bit is the division. But then the second thing is that I'm sure there are going to be sort of technical legal arguments about it. And is this constitutional? Was that followed? Etc., etc., etc. I get a little frustrated. You might have heard me express myself on this in interviews where, yes, process matters, I get that, but often I want to know from people what's wrong with the bill, because they're not really opposing it on process. They're opposing it because they don't like the outcome, and that's why they attack the process. Anyway, I'm almost certain, in fact, I'd put the large flask of coffee I have in front of me on the block and say that I will not drink coffee in the morning for a solid week. Can you imagine if it's not taken to court within the first 10 days? I'm sure it's going to be taken to court in the first 10 days. If I go through a very, very grumpy patch, well, then you know what happened, don't you? Anyway, let's see how that all plays out. Other news from the presidency yesterday was that they're going to reopen the inquest into the death of Albert Luthuli, who, of course, was the leader of the ANC when he died. I think he was serving a banning order. It was 1967. He had already received a Nobel Peace Prize for leading the liberation movement against apartheid at the time. Also into Griffiths and Klenge and Boy Manchi. The interesting thing, I mean, they're all interesting and they're all important in their own way. But Albert Lutuli, as you know, was, the official inquest said that he was hit by a train very near his farm. And no one was actually sort of found guilty of anything wrong. But it's a very interesting story. I have to say, and there are a couple of things. The first is I don't know what new evidence there could be. Apparently there is. I'm glad to hear it. The second is, you know me, I want these inquests to happen quickly. I think the families have a right to know. You look at, the Craddock 4, for example, and how long that process has taken. Amit Timmel, how long the process has taken. Neil Agate, how long it's taken. Shouldn't be like that. Should happen quickly. There's got to be a way to speed it up. And I know that lawyers have to do their work. I get that. You need the right outcome. But let's not take years over this, please. I can't see a reason why it should take longer than a calendar year from this point to get to the end point. I can't see why. I'm sure a lawyer would better educate, whatever. Just get on with it, please. Hurry up. All right. Other issues yesterday. A group of Muslim organizations, the International Union of Muslim Scholars, the European Muslim Council, the US Council of Muslim Organizations, they met with the ANC yesterday. They're on a sort of Thanksgiving tour, if you like, because of South Africa's support for the Palestinian cause in Gaza. And they've stood up and said they told Muslim South Africans to vote for the ANC. I haven't really seen such an explicit statement of support, if you're Muslim, you must vote for that kind of thing, before from any religious group. And by the way, I know there's all of this sort of theory that, the government is doing, going to the ICJ sort of for the Muslim vote. I mean, the Muslim population of South Africa is about 2% or under 2%. So I think on the maths, that argument doesn't really work, or it doesn't work for me anyway. You're welcome to your own view. But I was just interested in how explicit the support was. So I don't know if you have a view on that. We'll be very interested to see how that works. Staying with politics, and I sort of fear that I'm going to be saying that all the way through until mid-June, the Electoral Court, it's now emerged, has actually said that several political parties must pay a fine of between 10,000 and 40,000 rand for not giving proper audited financial statements to the Electoral Commission, as they have to do under the law. The political parties are the AIC, the ANC, the ATM, COPE, the NFP, and the PAC. They haven't done what they were supposed to do just before an election. I think it'll be something that'll come out of that, I'm fairly certain. Jocelyn Smith, and she's now been missing for 3 months, 6 years old. A huge story, of course, and will be a huge story, I think, for a long time. One of the last people arrested, Laurentia Lombard's now made a confession, we understand, but we'll only sort of hear it, I think, when that happens in sort of July. I'm really hoping we get to the bottom of this and find a little bit more about that, because I think it really is very important. The George building collapse, the number of people dead there now past 32, 20 still unaccounted for. And I think at this stage, we're kind of beginning to work out what the final death toll in this awful thing will be. I keep thinking about, and I'm not saying that there was sort of construction mafia activity in George. I don't know if there was or not. I have no idea. But I just wonder, when we talk about the construction mafia and the criminality that comes along with it, and it is, people using violence, what that does to building standards. You have to employ people. You have to pay money. So then someone, cuts costs to try and, whatever it is, there must be an impact on building standards. There must be. Anyway, we'll speak to the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sikhla Sikalala, about it in about an hour from now. And he's an interesting person to talk to because he's spoken to us before and told us how frustrated he's been at the long delays in building, new classrooms and new hospitals, partly because of the construction mafia. So I think he's going to be a very interesting person to speak to about that. And then I was interested in this, as my understanding, I saw the report in Nahawu, the big trade union, obviously very important at Parliament. Their members work there, and they support Kalila George. He is the Secretary to Parliament. Remember, his salary was increased after he was hired, and increased dramatically. He'd been receiving a certain salary at the South African Local Government Association. Parliament wanted him. The salary was much lower. He went to Parliament, received the lower salary, and then suddenly got a much bigger increase to sort of take his salary back to where it was. And this has led to all sorts of questions. But Nahawu is saying it wasn't he who raised his salary, it was other people. I don't know if you can really make that argument, but they're supporting him. I thought that was very interesting. Good to hear from you this morning. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. Nice to have you along. Busy Tuesday morning. Your views on the NHI. Is the president right to sign it into law? Someone found him his pen in time. 6:15.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. I have a pen in my right hand and I can't actually talk on the radio without it in my right hand. I don't know if you're the same.
Well, Stephen, I'm actually looking at my hand, and yes, it's also in my right hand.
Funny, isn't it, what you need to do things?
Yeah. Well, good morning.
Good morning. What's coming up today?
We continue to focus on the multi-story building collapse in George, and it has been described as the biggest built environment disaster in the country's history, and also brought to light discrepancies in building regulations, because under current legislation, private contractors are not required to register with regulatory bodies. Yesterday, a minute of silence was observed at 9 minutes past 2. That's the exact time the building collapsed on Monday. So search and rescue efforts continuing. The Constitutional Court matter of former President Jacob Zuma. The Constitutional Court has now issued new directives, and the Deputy Chief Justice wants clarity on the IEC Commissioner Janet Love's media comment that Zuma was not eligible to return to the National Assembly, and this before the Electoral Court ruled in Zuma's favour. The contesting parties being the Electoral Commission, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and Zuma, must now file their responses by the end of business day today, so we will be looking at that. The IEC will address a media briefing to speak about the preparations ahead of the elections, and the briefing will also cover the preparations for out-of-country voting, which will be taking place in 111 foreign missions on Friday as well as Saturday. Other stories we'll be looking at: the historic Coses 4 trial involving 2 former apartheid police officers is expected to get underway at the Johannesburg High Court. In 1982, 3 students were killed by an explosion at the Krugersdorp mine west of Johannesburg. And also the case of the 6 men accused of the murder of the Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Vleers will be back at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court, and the case was postponed last week, and the accused are facing charges of murder, robbery with aggravating circumstances, and defeating the ends of justice.
A lot going on all of a sudden, really, isn't it? And Musa, thank you very much indeed. I hope your pen and you will have a good morning. We'll be listening on the radio 17 minutes after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers by late afternoon. 13 and 24. Johannesburg, cloudy, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 10 and 23. Vereeniging, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 11 and 24. Bombela, cloudy, light rain, drizzle at times. 15 and 22. Polokwane, cloudy, partly cloudy by the afternoon. 12 and 23. Mahakeng, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 11 and 25. Vryburg, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 8 and 26. Mangaung, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 6 and 25. Kimberley, partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers. 11 and 27. Uppington, partly cloudy, 17 and 32. Cape Town, fine, cloudy with fog patches from the evening, a light and variable wind. 16 and 22. George, fine, a light and variable wind. 8 and 33. Gqeberha, morning fog, otherwise fine, a moderate to fresh northeasterly. 15 and 26. East London, partly cloudy in the morning, otherwise fine, a moderate to fresh northeasterly. 16 and 27. eThekwini, cloudy, isolated morning showers and rain, becoming partly cloudy from the late morning, a moderate to fresh easterly wind. 19 and 24. Richards Bay, cloudy, isolated morning showers and rain, becoming partly cloudy from the late morning, a moderate to fresh easterly wind. 19 and 24. And Pietermaritzburg, cloudy, morning fog, becoming fine from the late morning. 12 and 27.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. We'll come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far. Count down the best 41 moments from the last decade of Top Gear every Friday at 9 p.m. from the 3rd of May with Richard Hammond. Throwback to James May, aka Captain Slow, driving up an active volcano. The team goes on an epic supercar road trip through Romania and the unmasking of the Stig. I really thought he was malevolent. This is automotive action you simply cannot miss. Channel your inner Stig with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
20 minutes after 6, good morning. In Ukraine, it appears Russia is now making progress on certain parts of the front in its invasion in that country, while the Russian President Vladimir Putin has now removed Sergei Shoigu from the position of defense minister and replaced him with a civilian. Andrei Belousov is a former deputy prime minister who trained as an economist. Meanwhile, Ukraine itself appears to be battling to contain this latest surge in the fighting by Russia. Professor Abel Esterhuis is a professor of strategy at the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Esterhuis, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen.
How should we read this move by Putin? Why would he remove a defense minister, especially if that person has, I think, been in office for quite a long time?
Yeah, Stephen, when I read about it yesterday, I was reminded of what Churchill said about, infighting in the Kremlin. He said it's like two bulldogs fighting under a rock. An outsider only hears the growling, and only when the bones fly do you know the outcome thereof. And this is pretty much what we are witnessing over the last 2 days. Yeah, let's talk about Shoigu first. Of course, he's now moved to the Security Council, which is a demotion in a way, but it's also a respectful sort of shift for him, not to move him totally out of the decision-making circle. But we need to understand he's a friend of Putin. He's a very loyal friend of Putin. And I think they waited until they finished with the May parades before they shifted him to allow him to take the glory of the May parades. But he's not doing a good job in Ukraine, and for most people, he have become the embodiment of Russia not actually doing what it was supposed to do in the last 2 years in Ukraine. So this is, for me, part of a house cleaning. Of course, the incoming minister is an economist, as you've noted. And that, for me, is an indication that Russia is preparing for a long war here. Russia knows that this is going to be a war of attrition. And typically in a war of attrition, production capacity is perhaps the most important variable. He's an economist, but he's a state-orientated economist, and he's always been a good Putin soldier, Belousov. So I think this has to do with loyalty, but it also has to do with the war in Ukraine.
So it doesn't mean a change in strategy now. It does mean a change, maybe an emphasis in terms of if this is going to be a long-term war, as many wars have shown, it's about getting supplies. It's about making sure that you're able to actually produce what you need. And the focus is going to be that?
I think so. I think, the Russian economy is at the moment, and I'm actually going to talk about it this morning. Russian economy is at the moment at a point where it cannot do without the war. It is now gone into a war mode. And so the Russian economy is now really dependent on the war to keep it going. So I think we have now reached the point where mobilization, economic mobilization, has become a critical element in fighting this war from a Russian perspective. And of course, for the Ukraine as well, if Ukraine is not going to receive any meaningful help from the West, there's absolutely no chance that it will survive and be successful in this war. So this is going to be an interesting war of attrition now.
Who actually makes the strategic decisions in Russia? Is it the generals on the ground? Is it the person in charge of the defense ministry? Is it Putin himself? Is there a sort of, to use an American phrase, a kitchen cabinet of senior advisors or senior people who are insiders who make decisions?
Well, this is the typical one rural type of problem you have, that it is mostly situated in one person, and even if decisions are being made in the lower order decision-making processes, it is always sort of approved at the higher end by the most important individual, which is Putin. So we're sitting with a closed decision-making circle here, and one of the critical problems with a closed decision-making circle is that, well, beside the fact that most of the decisions are at least approved by one individual, it is also a case of you sitting with that particular individual that does not necessarily have all the information that is required to make good decisions. That's the first problem. The second problem, which is more a subjective type of problem, but he's feeding his own prejudices, his own particularities into that decision making, and it's not that quality decision making that you always find in an open decision making circle.
And very quickly, Russia's beginning to advance. I mean, that's important, obviously.
Well, that's the ground offensive. There's also the maritime and air offensive, because the Ukraine is also making quite a lot of progress in the air offensive against Russian battery infrastructure, and that is hurting Russia very, very, very dearly. It's deeply. It is actually a critical factor, and one of the reasons I think they move an economic individual into a position to counter that strategy. So this is typically a war of attrition. They're playing to each other's weak points. Ukraine is finding it difficult to maintain the personnel strength to fight the ground campaign. But Russia is vulnerable in terms of its infrastructure. So interesting war that is unfolding at the moment.
Professor Abel Eerstehuizen, thank you. Professor of Strategy, the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch. Appreciate the time. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Royal AM, they want to try and stop Mamelodi Sundowns. Best of luck.
Absolutely. They're fired up, wanting to break Sundowns' 50-match unbeaten run tonight. All happening at the Harigwala Stadium kickoff at 7:30 p.m. Now, Twisli Twatla, they've stretched their winless run to 5 matches in the league when they succumbed to a 1-0 loss to Sundowns away on Saturday, and it was their 4th successive defeat. Royal AM are placed 14th in the DStv Premiership standings, 2 points above the relegation playoff spot, which is 15th, currently occupied by Richards Bay. Meanwhile, Sundowns extended their unbeaten run to 50 matches in the league, and they are looking to become the first team to go the entire season without losing a game in the PSL era. Soccer action elsewhere. John Durant came off the bench to score twice and earn Aston Villa a 3-3 draw with Liverpool that all but ensures they will play Champions League football next season. Now, this comeback means that anything less than a victory for Tottenham at home to Manchester City this evening would mean Villa are certain of 4th. It was a dramatic, if unwanted, finale for Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp in his final away game in charge. Here's Klopp.
You can make of it what you want. That's the story of the season or whatever. I don't see it like that. For me, then the story of the season is that the boys have a really, really good character and a sensational attitude. That's why we were here today, and that's why we had now, I don't even know, 79 or whatever points, a lot. I know nobody wants to hear that, but being this season the 3rd best team in the league, from where we are coming from, is a statement as well as improvement with a lot of changes. I like it.
Cricket action, the log leading Kolkata Knight Riders guaranteed a top 2 place in this year's IPL log after rain forced their match against the Gujarat Titans to be abandoned in Ahmedabad last night. The abandonment, in which both teams take a point, also means the Titans, who had the slimmest of chances of reaching the playoff anyway, failed to make the cut and were eliminated. And finally, tennis. Zhi Zhenjiang says she's proud of herself after the 7-seed Chinese player defeated the 4 times Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka in straight sets 6-2, 6-4. Here's Zhang.
And I'm glad today, even I lost my service game at the beginning, I can still be, broke her fast and then trying to play my game. And after that, even the second set was really tight in one moment, but I was love 30 down in one game, but I'm still, keep my service game, hold the pressure on. I'm proud of myself today.
More sport, top of the hour on Sunrise. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You with SFM. More on the George building collapse. We'll speak to one of the people in charge of the investigation. That's next. You with SFM leading the conversation at 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Constitutional Court has asked the Electoral Commission, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma to make written submissions over statements made by the IEC's Commissioner Janet Love by the end of business today. This is in the matter which is set to determine Zuma's eligibility to stand for public office. Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sihle Zikalala has led a delegation of about 50 people to George in the Western Cape to visit the site of the collapsed building. The death toll in the tragedy was last night reported at 32, with 20 workers unaccounted for. And the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned the killing of a UN Safety and Security staff member in Rafah in southern Gaza yesterday, and injury to another staffer was also reported when the UN vehicle was struck en route to the European hospital in the southern city. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Reminder, if you're driving from Pietermaritzburg down to Durban, it is potentially going to be a busy morning, a busy run through. We've had a stacking of trucks earlier today from Sadara down towards Town Hill. The N3 was closed overnight for a truck crash recovery at Town Hill. So all of those trucks have been released now that the scene has been cleared and the road's been reopened. And inevitably, some will break down south of Pietermaritzburg. It often happens when you have the truck stationary for so long and then get them going again. Some around sort of Ashburton, Linfield Park, Umlas Road will just sort of conk out, and that of course is a construction zone, so just play it safe. Expect the worst. It probably will eventuate this morning. Joburg side looking generally fairly steady as we go. All the traffic building up in the usual hotspots this morning. R21 towards the airport is now getting busy into Clayville. That's only going to get worse over the next couple of hours. Cape Town, the N1 into town pretty heavy this morning from Durban Road to Belleville all the way through to Sable Road. The N2 between the airport and Mowbray Main Road is a little bit busier than you'd like. And just a reminder about the protest we mentioned earlier down in the Eastern Cape. There's a lot of protesting in the Eastern Cape on a daily basis. This morning, the big flare-up is the 396, just north of Solo, that Maclear Road. So Solo to Maclear currently blocked with protesting. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intal Lenglet, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. I hope you're well.
All good. Thanks. How are the markets this morning?
Well, equity markets took a breather at the beginning of the week. That's as traders erred on the side of caution ahead of the US CPI print. Traders are nervous about that data, expecting another hot print. And with that, US markets closed mostly in the red, with the Dow Jones snapping an 8-day winning streak. Over in Asia, markets are following cues from Wall Street overnight as traders, of course, remain cautious. Stocks on that end trading in mixed territory. Back at home, the local bourse backing the trend we're seeing playing out on the global front as it extended last week's gains, with the all-share ending the day 0.28% higher. The local unit also extending gains as it traded below 18.35 to the dollar at one point yesterday. This was its strongest level since mid-January. Now it's still hovering around those levels, trading at 18.37 to the greenback.
And then the Shane is looking at actually an IPO in London. Wow. I mean, they've moved so quickly.
Right, this is according to Reuters sources. Shein is planning to list. Shein plans to put its listing plans in the US on hold as it prepares to file an initial public offering with the UK's London Stock Exchange. Now, the change is set to come after the online clothing retailer faced regulatory challenges and pushback from US lawmakers. Now, Shein had initially filed for an IPO with the US Securities and Exchange Commission last November and approached the China Securities Regulatory Commission to get Beijing's approval. However, there hasn't been much progress with that plan as Shein's been struggling to clear regulatory hurdles in both the US and China. It has also been facing criticism from US lawmakers over alleged label malpractices and lawsuits from competitors. Now, one of the sources said that while Shein is now gearing up for a London listing, it still prefers New York as its listing venue and plans to keep its SEC application open in case there is any change in the stance of US regulators.
And then Anglo rejecting the second takeover offer from BHP.
Now, Anglo and BHP just seem to be butting heads at this point as Anglo rejected BHP's second takeover proposal, as you mentioned. Now, the Australian miner put through the new bid last week. It valued Anglo at $43 billion, which is 15% higher than the previous bid. But this did not impress Anglo's board. The miner's chair, Stuart Chambers, said the proposal fails to recognize the value inherent in Anglo American, as BHP still included the stipulation that Anglo must spin off its local units, which include Kumba Iron Ore and Anglo American Platinum, before the acquisition is actually finalized. Now, this, of course, comes as BHP eyes Anglo's copper assets that are based in Chile and Peru. It seems like BHP might go back to the drawing board, though, as the company's CEO, Mike Henry, says he continues to believe that a combination of the two businesses would deliver significant value for all shareholders.
Ntaleng, thank you very much indeed. Ntaleng Lachela back with you in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
There's sponsoring a news feature. Then there's helping your clients make the news. Search Standard Bank, Business and Commercial Banking to see how far they can take your business.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, over fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
The opposition leader in Chad, Sakes Masra, lodging a legal appeal. What do they want?
Stephen, remember that he has already claimed that there were some electoral fraud that was committed in those elections in Chad, where it gave President Mohamed Idris Deby 61.3% of the vote, and Masara success just got only 18%. Now they have lodged this appeal of what we can call electoral petition with the Constitutional Council of Chad to look at those outcomes. There have been tensions, Stephen, since the outcome of these elections. We were expecting them to come on the 21st of May, but they were quick to be announced on the national TV by the electoral body. So we are waiting for this presidential dispute that has been lodged by the former Prime Minister of the Transitional Government of Chad.
And then in Sudan, fires are now being used as a weapon. Wow.
Stephen, it's almost 201 settlements or houses that were caught with fire since April 2023 on the 15th. Tomorrow actually marks 1 year since this conflict in North Sudan. Now, this report comes from the US-based human rights group saying that they are now connecting the fires, Stephen, with the conflict in Sudan and also the military airstrikes. As we speak, even yesterday, there was a military airstrike in one of the old palaces of Khartoum of 1832. So you can see that this conflict in Sudan is also including the acts of arson by both forces from the Sudan Army and the Rapid Support Forces.
And then in Nigeria, labor unions there staging big protests. This is about increases in electricity prices.
But it's linked also with cost of living crisis, Stephen. I think the Jagaban Bola Tinubu's government is trying to cut costs by all means, but the labor unions yesterday, the majority led by the Labour Congress went on the street of Lagos and Abuja saying that the increase of electricity rates, Stephen, doesn't make sense because the government they also have power cuts. There's also the issue of corruption in that power supply. They're raising the issue of a cost of living, as I've mentioned, and the subsidy that Bola Tinubu, when he came into power, Stephen, scrapped the fuel subsidy to many workers and to the government's officials. Hence, we have this crisis of protest after protest.
And then in East Africa, internet users in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, they're very frustrated.
They are very frustrated. Remember, in March also, West and Southern Africa were the same challenge. And they will tell you is that undersea cables link that is also via South Africa. So yesterday, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, they had a challenge in terms of connecting both the Airtel, Kenya, Vodacom, Tanzania. Their challenge is even to connect on this network. Others are saying the impact on internet traffic that also impacted in the Southern Africa, Malawi, Mozambique, Madagascar, and South Africa had the same challenge. So this is a serious challenge, Stephen. If you talk about fourth industrial revolution, whether you talk of 5G, 4G, it also shows that the acts of nature are turning on these networks.
And then you're taking us back all the way to the 14th of May, 1905.
Hastin Kamuzu Banda, the leader of Nyasaland, which became Malawi in 1964, 60 years ago, Stephen was born on this day in Kasungu. Went to study in the US. We know Kamuzu Banda also, Stephen. He was one person who he's coming into office and into power. It was very controversial where he led one party state, strip off his presidency in 1993 and was succeeded by Baliki Mulusi. Now he died in 1997 at the age of 91. Asante Sana SG, SAFM still leading the conversation, observing the Africa man.
Ross Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you. There's listening to the news. Then there's making the news. Grow your business into the next big thing with Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking.
When humans invented the wheel, we thought that getting things from A to B would stop there. But it didn't. Soon after, horses drew carts to deliver goods. And that could have been it. But it wasn't. Because the goods had to move quicker. So we invented cars and went from hooves to horsepower on highways. Then the goods got heavier. So we built tankers to ship the cargo across the sea. And then we needed a solution that was cost-effective, so we built trains to transport the cargo. Then we wanted to receive the goods the following business day, so we built planes. But then we wanted a smaller and faster aircraft, so we invented drones. And it won't stop there. Because with the right mindset, there's possible. Then there's more. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking to see how far we can take your business. Standard Bank is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, voice notes coming through this morning, as you know, many different things going on, and voice notes are coming through on the reopening of some of these inquests from the apartheid era.
Morning, Stephen. Stephen, according to me, this inquest for the fallen heroes is useless. They won't be happy seeing where the country is going to. They won't be happy. It's better to continue with what they died for, their cause, than to open inquest, spending money where people are going to loot again from those inquests. The country is burning. Why are they not focusing on the cause, on those fallen heroes' cause, what they really died for? Norman from Brixton.
Sure, Norman, was not the response I expected to the inquest story. All right, literally a minute from now, the latest from the situation in George.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012-568-3233. That's 012-568-3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Which is the best way to reach success? Is it best to go alone so you can go fast? Or for many to go together so they can go far? What if you need to go fast and far? At RMB, we believe the best way to success doesn't make you choose when both are possible. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
6:45, good morning. In George, the number of people who've now died after the building collapse there has risen to 32. At least 20 people are still unaccounted for, just over a week now since that building collapsed. Gerhard Otto is the manager for disaster management at the Garden Route District Municipality, also chairs the multi-agency command centre for this incident. Gerhard, good morning. I know you've got a lot on your plate this morning. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning. Good morning also to all the listeners. What can I assist you with?
You've been trying to help the workers on the site, the people who've survived. How difficult has it been to do that over the last few days?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. Remember, there's been at stages 198, 200 people on site, all the emergency workers working together. Fortunately, we've got a very good system, the incident command system on site being practiced. So they're rolling out in teams in 12-hour shifts, and they are supported also by a lot of the NGOs and FPOs in this area. So it's been going well. I must say, all the teams, the spirits was lifted when we got a body, a person alive, Gabriel, and since then we've been searching through to see if we cannot find any more people.
The people who are on the site, who survived, have they been able to tell you much about what happened? Have you been able to communicate with them? I mean, they obviously need a huge amount of help themselves at the moment.
Yeah, we've got a psychosocial support team assisting them, but they've been really helpful because the interviews we've had with them could indicate to us where the people would have been 2:09 on Monday when the building collapsed. So we've been using their information to also feed through to the rescue teams to focus where they should look in the bigger four-story building. We knew on what floors people were working. So that also has been guiding our teams to know where to go and search. At this point, in sectors B, we've divided the whole area up in 6 sectors. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, like that. So in sector B and C, we know on the first floor where we're supposed to find more people.
Okay, so you're still looking for more people, and there is still a chance that someone could still be alive under that.
We don't give up hope. In Turkey, people was found after 13 days and still being alive, and that was a 90-odd-year-old person. So this is young people. We're still hoping to find somebody alive.
Sure. What kind of investigation are you carrying out? I mean, there are lots of different processes running at the same time. I presume a final investigation will take a very long time, but you must be getting some information about what actually happened.
Yeah, remember, this is a crime scene, so the police is doing their investigations. The Department of Labour is primarily responsible for providing all the information from the whole construction. Everything is done. There's 4 teams as we speak. I mean, the Department of Local Government also appointed engineers, and they will all be comparing notes and they will be sharing the information. This is seen as a crime scene, so everything removed from that site is under secure guard. So all the information provided as we carry on is filed, and all the documentation is kept safe. So this investigation will carry on quite a while. But yeah, we're trying to keep a close eye on everything. Everything done on that site is logged minute by minute. We've got photography, we've got drone imagery, high resolution drone imagery. So there will be a record for future reference.
And we know the community's been there, people have been out to help you from George, everyone's spoken about that. Is there anything else you still need at this stage?
We've put out a call for people that could provide psychosocial support in the language of the people, Malawi and Zimbabwe and Mozambique. We did receive some feedback, but we will still request that more people contact the integrated professional team. I can provide you with a number where they can phone, or they can just report to the George Civic Centre, and then from there on they will be linked to the team to assist the people. As we are doing body recovery, you can realize that is the one of the big needs that we need to address.
Gerhard Otto, thanks very much indeed. In charge of the disaster management of the Gardenwood District Municipality and chairing the multi-agency command chair for this incident. Gerhard, to you and your teams, as much strength as you can get. There is so much, of course, that is still going on in the situation in George. 10 minutes now to 7 o'clock.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a heavy backlog on Pretorius N4. This is inbound towards the N1 highway. You're going to be asked to sit in some very heavy traffic from Rousseau Street, making your way through Watermeyer and down towards the M1 highway. Then N4, Emilithville Highway, Hatfield bound, Pretoria bound, really badly backed up. Crash on the M1 south before Olifantsfontein Road. So traffic coming through from Centurion starting to backlog. R21 is now queuing to Clayville. That's into the roadworks. And there's a breakdown going into Galuli. So from Linksfield Road, from the Edenvale side, that's all very busy as you make your way down to the Galuli interchange area. First of the forecast broken down trucks on the way to Durban from Pietermaritzburg has arrived. It's just before Limfield Park. Keep in mind, you've got an enormous backlog of truck traffic coming from an Operation Stack closure overnight at Town Hill. They were all released about 5:30, so there's a big volume of truck traffic driving into that stationary one just south of Ashburton towards Limfield Park into the roadworks. Cape Town this morning, the N2 inbound looking pretty heavily backed up. A crash between Mowbray Main Road and Hospital Bend, pushing traffic on the N2 back to Robert Sobukwe, and that'll also have an impact on the M5 North coming from Kenilworth trying to get into that N2 inbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Sydney on the line from Egenhoek, good morning. You want to talk about the ANC and that big event yesterday with Muslim organizations. Go for it.
Good morning, Brother Steve. True, Sydney, the level in Akonuk, Abuj Patridge. Brother Steve, me too. I come carrying the cross of my Christ Jesus to support that call of the Muslims to say all the Muslims must support the current ANC government, because it is at the bigger picture the government that is supporting the pain of the Palestinians. Being here in the southern tip of Africa, there's nothing I can do. But at least now I have found an emotional, sentimental added reason why I must also vote for my ANC, because of that Palestinian pain, what Palestinians are going through. I cannot do anything being here at the corner of Akanuk. But now my vote for ANC, it tells me I'll be defending the Palestinians here, supporting Bofran Chikani. Israel had even to destroy the Asian Christian churches of the Palestinians. Why this cruelty? There are also Christians there in the Palestinians. There are Muslims there. But I come with my Christ to this cause to say, knowing exactly the domestic problems we have in our country, yes, the problems which are here, but for this bigger picture, the Palestinians, of the Palestinians, I support ANC for this reason. Then all Muslims, different parties here in South Africa, which we understand we were supposed to vote for. But for this bigger picture, let's empower ANC so that we could stand for the Palestinians. It's what I believe in. What is cruelty?
Sure. Sydney, we've heard you. Interesting, of course, on the situation there. And I mean, look, there are lots of different views, of course, on this, as you know. It's a very important issue. And I think there's a lot to it. I think there's a lot in this issue as well. You were there, SAFM. It's 7 minutes now to 7.
At SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
The SA Rainbow Alliance, one of the new parties contesting for power in the election, says if it's in government after the election, it will institute a grant for unemployed single men. In other words, men who are unemployed would get a grant just for them. The leader of the SA Rainbow Alliance is the former Speaker in the city of Joburg, Colleen Makubele. Colleen, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners at home.
Why are you proposing a grant for unemployed single men?
The question is why not? Because the child support grant that is there was driven by the political, economic, and social factors that shaped how it was proposed. And since 94, if you look at the Women's Report of Stellenbosch in 2022, they still report, according to the Lund Commission that was done, the child support grant largely supports women who are caregivers, women who look after the children as single mothers or aunties or grandparents. Many of the single fathers do not understand the provision in the Constitution, Section 27, that they can access this grant to look after their own. And you go to the villages, you go to the rural areas. A lot of the children that are left desolate because they've lost a mother or a grandmother who was looking after them, yet a father is there. And when he is not made to understood and the policy is reinforced, that single men can access this if they are caregivers. It has created so much social ills. The highest suicide rate in this nation, Stephen, is black men who are caregivers who are unemployed. The statistic says of all the 13 million grants, about 7 to 8 million are women who go and collect. The 6 million men are not collecting those social grants. So clearly there's something wrong in the policy and how we shape it and how we're going to build societies and families and healthy children that are looked after, whether they have a man or a woman looking after them as a caregiver.
So, would it not be better to say that the child support grant is the child support grant? It goes to whoever needs it, a man or a woman, whoever's looking after children, and to improve the way that that is managed so that everyone realizes, everyone who qualifies for it realizes they have a right to it? Or to simply say that anyone who is unemployed, whether they're a man or a woman or identify in another way, get that grant. What I'm interested in is that you seem to be explicitly saying this is for men when maybe we need to just change the way we manage the grants we already have.
Look, it can be put in any other way as anybody would like, but as Sarah, we see it fit to put this way because it is addressing the social ill that we have seen so glaringly in front of us. And also, Stephen, anyone can rise up and say, I want expropriation of land without compensation, knowing that it's an illegal. You can tell them how to put it. But it will depend on what the party has identified as what is it that is their priority at this stage. For us right now, building those young children that we have met, that we have spoken, even if it reaches 1 or 2 kids out there who are left desolate now, they have to be looked after by some auntie or moved to a different family, mainly because that single father is so ignorant, and not by design, but by circumstances, economic factors. We know that when they were designing the policy, it was amended later, that policy to include, of course, men. But initially from conception, and which was not managed, it was to assist women. You must go back to the records of that Lund's Commission. And this report of Stellenbosch 2022. And it was clearly said that unemployed men are suffering the most. They are below poverty line, most of them. Most black men are not at work, and they are not accessing this. And even in itself, we're proposing an increase. It's 500 rands. Okay. What do you do as a caregiver with 500 rands every month? It's minute with this high cost of living. And we're saying those caregivers, if you look into our policy, we talk about women as well.
Sure.
But what we chose to highlight is the single men, because that's where the issue is. And that's where we want to preserve this nation before it implodes with these men who've got children who don't know that help is available for them. And we are making sure that they understand that as part of our policy.
Okay, and Colleen, I'm sure, like everyone else, you're watching the situation in Gaza. Do you believe what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide? Do you support, as Sarah, do you support government's case at the International Court of Justice?
Look, I've always said, as Sarah, we want to stand and call for peace in that section. What South Africa has done to choose a side, we don't believe in it. We don't believe as those who should be peace brokers must go to the International Court of Justice and only point out one hand and not point out the injustice that was also done by Hamas, because that's where the issue is. But once you go as a neutral, according to our policy, according to our foreign policy of South Africa, to say we're looking for peace, both parties that have done injustice, let them be accountable. But when you go and choose one side, it aggravates the situation.
Can
And we have
someone?
chosen to
I'm
take
sorry.
that
I'm sorry,
neutral
Colleen.
line.
Can someone really be neutral? I mean, when you see 35,000 people killed by the through the actions of the Israeli Defense Force in Gaza, when the United Nations says what Israel is doing in Gaza is wrong, I mean, you're not taking a side, really?
No, we're not taking a side. We are standing and saying we want a peaceful reason. In this nation, Stephen, we had so much injustice, death, things that we're not even able to resolve.
And people
today.
took sides, as Tutu
fine.
told people to do. People took sides.
It's fine, but I'm saying us as Sarah, we have understood that reconciliation is the way to go. That's why me and you can stand here today in the new South Africa, when injustice was done on both sides, and look forward to the future.
But only because people took sides. People fought against apartheid is the point. If something is wrong, don't you need to fight against it?
We are praying for them. We are seeking that the leaders that have been placed in positions right now to make sure they can impact and affect change there, they really bring both sides together. Whether you take the left or the side or the right or the or whatever side you take, I think what will solve the issue is a peaceful resolution, to find a ceasefire approach and to find how the two can coexist, just like black and white here are coexisting. That's our policy as Sarah. And that's what we're standing for right now. We are not intimate and intricate on the details of the causes of what has happened, historical issues, but we are intimate on the death of women and children, the human rights that are being violated. Israel is doing a lot of human rights violation. We're not going to be denying that. A lot is happening there where we see children mutilated and women, etc. There is no excuse for it. There is no excuse for it. But we're standing here to say, let there be a resolution. I don't think to then further aggravate the situation of war by taking sides. It's like a man and a woman when they are fighting. At some point you must just come and broker peace. Then you can deal with what has happened. How do we resolve the issue? When you come and take sides, sometimes it just aggravates the situation.
Colleen Makubele, thank you, leader of the SA of the South African Rainbow Alliance. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, Constitutional Court issues directives in Zuma matter and Guterres condemns killing of a UN staff member in Rafah. Good morning. We start with election-related news. The Constitutional Court has asked the Electoral Commission, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma to make written submissions over statements made by the IEC's Commissioner Janet Love by the end of business today. This is in the matter which is set to determine Zuma's eligibility to stand for public office. The MK Party, through its legal counsel, argued before the Con Court last week that Love was biased after she said the former president would not be eligible to stand for public office due to his 15-month sentence meted out by the Constitutional Court. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
There are 7 questions that the Apex Court has put before the parties. Among them is whether Love ought to have refrained from expressing a view on Zuma's eligibility, whether she ought to have recused herself from participating in the IEC's determination of the former president's eligibility, and what effect would her participation have on the IEC's determination of Zuma's eligibility. The legal counsel for the respondents on Friday argued that Love made a premature announcement in relation to the disqualification of the former president when probed on the matter during a press briefing. The electoral body is seeking clarity and the correct interpretation of Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution. Judgment was reserved.
Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sihle has led a delegation of about 50 people to George in the Western Cape to visit the site of the collapsed building. The death toll in the tragedy was last night reported at 32, with 20 workers unaccounted for. Zigalala was accompanied by the Deputy Minister of International Relations, Alvin Bottas. Some of the experts who were part of the delegation were from the Engineering Council of South Africa and the Construction Industry Development Board. Zigalala says the experts will help in the investigation into the cause of the disaster.
We are one started community, we are one Africa. So the cry of Malawi, Zimbabwe, or Lesotho, Mozambique, it's our cries. So we want to express our condolences to all of you. We are here to inspect on behalf of, or as the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure.
3 girls have been raped at Seshego outside Polokwane in Limpopo. Police spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says the girls aged 13, 14 and 16 were walking back home after a street party when a group of men forcefully took them to a nearby RDP house. Mashaba says the suspects raped them multiple times before releasing them.
According to the information, 3 victims aged 13, 14 and 16 were at the street bash at around 2 o'clock in the morning. They then decided to go home. They were accompanied by 3 homeboys. Along the way, a group of unknown men armed with grass-cutting scissors and knives approached them. When the 3 homeboys who were with the victims spotted the suspects, they fled the scene. The suspects forcefully grabbed the victims and took them to the closest RDP house, where they all raped them multiple times before releasing them. They then fled the scene.
11 suspects arrested over the weekend for robberies linked to online shopping have made their first appearance at the Garankuwa Magistrates Court north of Pretoria in Camera. They still have to take part in an identity parade following their arrest on Friday. Gauteng police say they received a tip-off about a man about to be robbed after being lured to buy a truck that was advertised on Facebook Marketplace. Police then pounced on the suspects and a shootout ensued. Agriculture Minister Toko Didiza is expected to officially open the KMF agro-processing plant on a farm near Lichtenburg in the northwest today. The department says the modernized facility belonging to renowned livestock farmer Dr. Obakeng Mfikwe is the first black-owned facility in the province, and it can process up to 100 animals a day. Tebogo Pakedi reports.
According to the Department of Agriculture, the Northwest Province's reputation for producing cattle, the majority of which are not slaughtered in the province, depriving the local economy of desperately needed capital, influenced their decision to invest in the agro-processing plant. This project, which is expected to not only boost the local economy, but also benefit the surrounding areas and give local producers processing options closer to their farm gate, as well as keeping supply chains and jobs in the region. The department says the project has thus far created 50 jobs.
And finally, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned the killing of a UN Safety and Security staff member in Rafah in southern Gaza yesterday. An injury to another staffer was also reported when the UN vehicle was struck en route to the European hospital in the southern city. The details of the strike has yet to be established, as the number of UN personnel killed in Gaza since the 7th October has risen to close to 200. UN spokesperson Farhan Haq expressed the Secretary-General's deep sadness when learning of the latest UN casualties in Gaza.
The Secretary-General condemns all attacks on UN personnel and calls for a full investigation. He sends his condolences to the family of the fallen staff member. With the conflict in Gaza continuing to take a heavy toll, not only on civilians but also on humanitarian workers, the Secretary-General reiterates his urgent appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and for the release of all hostages.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court has asked the Electoral Commission Umkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma to make written submissions over statements made by the IEC's Commissioner Janet Love by the end of business today. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Athletics. Caster Semenya is awaiting a pivotal human rights court decision in her fight against athletics gender rules. And in soccer action tonight, Royal AM are setting their sights on ending Mamelodi Sundowns' historic 50-match unbeaten streak. We'll find out more just before 7:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy queues if you use the N4 Emil Highway into Pretoria. Big backlogs from almost Simon Vermooten this morning, right through Watermeer Street and right down towards the N1. You might want to consider some alternatives to beat that. A crash on the M1 South near Samrand Road, slowing traffic arriving from Centurion. A lot of pressure around the four ways in Bryanston area this morning. Lights are out all over Witkoppen and Main. Also, Willie Mandela at Bryanston Drive. Lights out there. Cedar Road coming into Uranium is a big backlog as well. Crash on Joburg's N3 south at Galuli's. That's heavy now from Modderfontein. Big queues passing the Edenvale area. And then Cape Town, a crash blocking a couple of lanes. N2 inbound by Hospital Bend. So the traffic driving in on the N2 is backed up from Robert Sobukwe. That's a queue you'll pick up just after the airport. And then behind that, the M5 is pretty heavily back coming from Ottery Kenilworth this morning as you queue up to get into that N2 traffic towards the Hospital Bend area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. A busy morning. Your mediated conversation from 8:30 this morning is around this repeated, consistent call for a national dialogue, something outside of the elections. Former President Thabo Mbeki, the latest to make this call, but several others have. We'll speak to someone who's for it, someone who's against it, and then someone sort of in the middle. I think it says something very serious when a former president of the governing party says, the party's still in government, says that we need some kind of national dialogue. I think that is important. We'll talk electricity. This whole debate around are the lights still on? Is there no load shedding only because of the elections? Basically is what it boils down to. We'll hear more on that in just a moment. And then also the situation in George. We'll speak to the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sikhla Zikalali, with SFM 10 after 7.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Location: London. Unit: the London Serious Crime Unit. The Steering: Luther, a dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge: every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation. Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
13 after 7, good morning. The Electricity Minister, Continental says Eskom's power station fleet is now running at an energy availability factor of over 70%. In other words, they're producing a lot more power on a more reliable basis than at any point really since 2021. But Eskom is also denying claims it's using more diesel than before to power its open-cycle gas turbines. It says it used 1.1 billion rands worth of diesel in April this year, compared to over 3 billion rand last year. Ramokgopa has consistently denied claims that Eskom has tried to stop load shedding for the elections. Daphne Mukwena is the spokesperson at Eskom. Daphne, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
What has changed to get such a high energy availability factor in the last few weeks? What is Eskom doing differently that it didn't do before?
So, Stephen, we've been actually announcing that we have implemented what we call the Generation Operational Recovery Plan since March 2023 when the new board came in. So basically, this plan was looking at people or addressing people issues, plan performance, processes, and governance. So when you look at the plan performance that obviously this plan was looking at, you will remember that in September last year, actually we had, maybe before I go to September, we had about 6 priority stations that were, if you like, were in what we call ICU. So those were identified as 6 stations that we needed to look at and do some work on them so that we can improve their performance. Now, one of the stations, or one of those 6 stations was Kusile Power Station. You remember that Kusile had 3 units that were not functional or operational because of the incident that we had in October 2022. So by September, which was actually earlier than we thought, brought those 3 units back into service, which is about 2,400 megawatts. And that also gave us an opportunity to do more maintenance. So deliberately, we also focused on doing extensive maintenance while these units were back. I mean, our maintenance, for an example, we did about 8,000 megawatts of capacity was taken out to do maintenance. So based on that, now that we are bringing those units back, we are bringing them reliably so, or they are reliable, because if you look at our UCLF, or the unplanned capacity loss factor, what one could also call the breakdowns, they've tremendously gone down. I mean, yesterday we registered under 10,000 megawatts, which is basically a figure or a performance that we haven't seen for quite a while. I mean, since I think 2021. So based on that, because remember, your energy availability factor depends on what you have taken out from the system in terms of planned maintenance, in terms of breakdowns. So we deliberately did a maintenance. We not deliberately, but our plan also was to bring these units, Kusile and other units, obviously working on them, like your Majubas, your Mata, which are performing very well, beyond 70%. Actually, Majuba is performing at 80% energy availability factor as we speak.
Okay, so Daphne, how long do you think you'll be able to keep the EAF, the energy availability factor, like this for? Are you going to be able to keep things at this level for a sustained period of time?
Well, so based on the maintenance that we have done, Stephen, as I said, that we are seeing that when we're returning these units, they are performing reliably. So hence, we talk about a very low breakdown rate, or a very low unplanned capacity load factor as we speak currently. So, however, as we approach winter, because during our winter status of the system winter outlook, we did mention that we were expecting that our actually best case scenario, our unplanned or breakdowns will be at 14,000, but we are actually performing at about 5,000 less, or 4,400 less than megawatts, less than what we anticipated our best case scenario would be. So even if we go into load shedding, I think this winter, it will be much, much less. Remember, we said if we go to load shedding, would be at stage 2. However, if we hit the breakdowns at 17,000, we'll go to stage 5. But we don't see that happening with the current performance, Stephen.
Okay, I'm sorry to rush you, Daphne, but just to be quite clear, you know what's going to happen if load shedding comes back on the 1st of June. I mean, you know what the reaction will be. So this is not about running power stations too hard now just to keep the lights on before that, right?
Sorry, say that again.
This is not about running the power stations too hard now so there's no load shedding before the election.
So generally, what is happening now is that the power stations are basically performing well. And hence, that's why we're saying we're not even, the last 4 days, we're not using diesel for an example. And actually, in other instances, we have excessive supply where we have to call some of the station on cold reserve. So basically, it's not about us, having all what we've been hearing, that we are running we are running diesel excessively to actually ensure that I'm not sure whether because of the election, the coming elections, but that's not true. This is just the benefits that we are now seeing of the hard work of the employees, what they have done, and the plan that we put in place in March 2023.
Daphne Mokoena, thank you very much indeed. You were there, SAFM, 20 minutes after 7. Chris Yelland is the energy expert at EE Publishers. Chris, good morning. You've been watching the Eskom system for many years. Do you believe an EAF of over 70% is sustainable? We're not going to have load shedding again after the election?
Look, I think we must be very careful about cherry picking the data to suit the narrative. When one talks about the energy availability factor, one's talking about energy availability factor, and energy is measured over a period of time. If one just chooses the best day, the best hour, or the best minute to quote an EAF, it is actually meaningless. One has to look at the EAF over a period of time, and generally the minimum time period that one should look at over is a period of 1 week. I do see quite often people at Eskom and the minister are cherry-picking the data to suit their narrative, and that's not to try and rain on their parade, but it is necessary to look at the EAF over a period of a week, and I publish every single week the Eskom data, the official Eskom data, and that data comes out every week, and it'll be coming out on Thursday this week, and I will publish it again. But the EAF of 70% needs to be stated clearly over what period of time it's been measured. If it's just cherry-picked over a minute or an hour, it's actually meaningless.
Okay, so in other words, it's not clear yet exactly what's going on. Do you think what Eskom is doing at the moment is sustainable? I realize it's a very big question.
Well, I don't want to rain on Eskom's parade. They've done very well, and I want to congratulate them for what they've achieved. However, it does worry me that in the discussion that you've just had and the discussions that we see elsewhere, Eskom seems to take all the credit itself. As though, it is the only contributor through its maintenance efforts to this wonderful achievement of avoiding load shedding. The reality of the matter is something different. There are a whole number of reasons why we are where we are. These are good reasons. They are rational reasons. It's not about conspiracy. It's about good reasons, such as the great improvement bringing the failed units at Kusile back into service. The fact that the economy is very flat at the moment is helping the situation. The fact that the electricity price, Eskom's electricity price, is going up very, very sharply is causing customers, to use electricity much more efficiently, and in fact avoiding using Eskom electricity wherever that is possible. And lastly, the contribution from residential, commercial, and agricultural rooftop solar PV and battery energy storage, private power purchase agreements, wheeling and trading of electricity. These are all reducing the burden on Eskom's generation and playing a very significant role in reducing load shedding. So yes, whilst Eskom has achieved good things in terms of its maintenance, and let's give them credit and congratulate them, I just feel that they are trying to blow their trumpet and not give credit to the many other factors that are also contributing. This is a big team effort by government, by Eskom, by private sector and business, and by individual customers and households and commercial enterprises, and it's all coming together. Let's also give the Minister of Electricity credit for the work that he's done, bringing a new energy to the problem, and through his work at NECOM and the whole NECOM team that is working hard to achieve these results. This is not just about Eskom maintenance, believe me.
Chris Yellen, thank you very much indeed, the energy expert. 24 after 7.
I believe in a South Africa where the economy works for all and where there's at least one job in every home. Where our children are maths and science champions, not dying in pit latrines.
Where the color of my skin doesn't determine my chances in life.
I believe in a South Africa where all citizens can be proud of their country.
And where my family will not be the next victim of a violent act of crime.
A place where those who steal public monies are arrested and jailed.
This dream is possible, and together we can build one South Africa. I'm Musi Maimane, and on these elections, I'm asking you to vote for Build One South Africa.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Louis Theroux is ready to take you on an adventure of intriguing documentaries, Thursdays at 10 p.m. on S3 from the 2nd of May. Tune in as Louis explores dangerous, toxic and criminal behavior in Forbidden America, May the 2nd, 9th and 16th. On the 23rd of May, explore the world of human trafficking as Louis explores the often complex relationship between prostitute and pimp on Trafficking Sex. In The Night in Question, Louis Theroux heads to America's East Coast to explore the rise in sexual assault cases on university campuses. Meet the guilty, falsely accused, and those who felt let down by the current legal system. How America tries to establish new rules of consent amongst America's younger generation. Airs 30th of May. Channel your best Louis Theroux with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Stellies gets it that they can never catch Masandawana, but they want to secure the second position. Meanwhile, Kabuyelo loves it on the summit and want to grab 3 points to extend their lead. This is the DSTV Premiership. Witness the unmatched passion of Mzansi's beautiful game. Stellenbosch FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC on Saturday, 18 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. An anxious period for Caster Semenya.
Yes, Semenya standing strong, fighting for fairness in athletics at the Human Rights Court. Now, this is a landmark case that could redefine gender policies in sports. South Africa's Semenya awaiting the ruling from the European Court of Human Rights. Now, she's a double Olympic champion. She's challenged the regulations that require her to lower her natural testosterone levels to compete in women's events. Now, this follows her victory last July, where the court declared her previous losses as discriminatory. Now, today, Semenya makes her stand in Strasbourg. She represents not just her own career, but but countless athletes facing similar challenges. Soccer action, Royal AM looking to end Mamelodi Sundowns' invincible bid when they meet in tonight's DStv Premiership match at the Harry Gwala Stadium, 7:30 p.m. the kickoff. Royal AM are placed 14th in the DStv Premiership standings, 2 points above the relegation playoff spot, while Sundowns extend their unbeaten run to 50 matches in the league, and they are looking to become the first team to go their entire season without losing a game in the PSL era. Elsewhere, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola believes his side's hopes of winning a fourth successive Premier League title will be over if they fail to win at Tottenham tonight. With 2 games left, the champions are 1 point behind leaders Arsenal, who have just 1 match to play against Everton on the final day. City close out their season at home to West Ham. Here's Pep Guardiola.
How difficult is it be here already again, and we have something unique in front of us. So, and you have to do our best performance, give absolutely everything. I don't have doubts what's going to happen, and try to read exactly the game we're going to play and try to interpret it as best as possible and go. With many times happen, we played really good many times, but we were not able to score and win the games.
Elsewhere, Oliver Giroud confirming his departure from Serie A side AC Milan as the club posted an interview of the forward on their social media platforms. The World Cup champion announced he'll leave the club for the MLS once his contract expires this summer. The 37-year-old joined the Italian Giants in 2021, scoring 38 goals in 95 appearances and won the Serie A title in his first season. Tennis, Iga Swiatek beating Germany's Angelique Kerber to go through to the quarterfinals of the Italian Open in Rome. Joining Swiatek in the last 8 is the American third seed Coco Gauff. She beat Paula Badosa. And finally, boxing, Mike Tyson's fight against Jake Paul in Texas on the 20th of July has been sanctioned as a competitive boxing match rather than an exhibition, and the rounds will be shorter, but the gloves will be heavier. Now, Paul will be a YouTube influencer. He's known to have embarked on a professional boxing career 4 years ago. He's won 9 out of 10 fights with 6 knockouts. Tyson, the undisputed world heavyweight champion from 1987 to 1990, he retired in 2005 after winning 50 fights, 44 by knockout. Here's Jake Paul.
Age doesn't matter. Age is just a number. He's a killer. He's a warrior. He's been doing this his whole entire life. So it's second nature to him. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've been doing it at a super high level. But on July 20th, I'm going to show the world that I can outbox Mike Tyson and prove everyone wrong and show that I will be the one doing the killing.
More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Tyson in the third round. I mean, come on, there's just no chance. You're with SFM leading the conversation. All right, more from the Minister Sikla Sikalala on the situation in Georgia in a moment. Just gone 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the George municipality says 6 of the 32 workers who died when a partially built building collapsed last week have been identified. Municipal spokesperson Chantal Edwards says they are setting up plans to speed up the identification process. Some Sheldon village residents at Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga are calling for justice after the brutal killing of a 2-year-old girl in the area. And the Constitutional Court has asked the Electoral Commission Umkhonto we Sizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma to make written submissions over statements made by the IEC's Commissioner Janet Love by the end of business today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
I run through the traffic hotspots this morning. There's a few busy ones. The N4 into Pretoria, bad backlogs this morning, just after Simon Vermooten, all the way through to the N1 highway. That's direction Pretoria, direction Hatfield. That's badly backed up. Nasty crash on the M1 south at Samrand, the Bucky overturning. Queues heavy back into the Brockfontein interchange. And a crash on Joburg's N3 south at Galulis. Traffic is now parking back through Modderfontein Road and back to Alex. You'll need plenty of extra time to get through that if you're coming from the north using the N3 to access access the airport this morning. Also crash on the N12, Potchefstroom Highway between Komaro and Klip River Drive. So that's quite heavy, moving away from the Glen direction, Soweto up towards Klip River Drive. Quite a heavy queue. Durban, a collision on the N3, out of town at Paradise Valley. One lane open, big backlogs from Pavilion Mall, although it is starting to move through. There's a crash on the N2 at Sabaya. So between Gateway and Sabaya, that traffic en route to King Shaka is looking quite heavy as well. And Cape Town, a smash on the N2 into town at Hospital Bend. A couple of lanes of block. Traffic's all the way back towards the airport. Behind that, the M5 queues really heavily this morning from sort of Plumstead, Ottery area. Some real problems getting off the M5 and into that N2. And there's been a truck crash on the Bosmansdam Bridge over the N7. So some really big traffic coming out of Botasak and Edgemead Drive areas out towards the N7. The N7 north from Goodwood, off-ramping at Bosmansdam's pretty heavily backed as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
In Tarlingla, morning again. How are the markets this morning?
Let's kick things off in Asia. Things are starting to pick up as stocks start trading in positive territory. Chinese tech stocks in particular rallied ahead of earnings from Tencent and Alibaba, which are out later today. But the general mood is that of caution ahead of the US CPI print. The Chinese Shanghai index is down 0.17%, while Japan's Nikkei is up 0.13%. In Wall Street, futures are range-bound, pretty flat for most part, as investors braced for key inflation data out tomorrow. On home ground, sentiment is quite upbeat, with the JSE powering through, the all-share rising close to 0.3% in yesterday's trade. Meanwhile, the rand dipped below 18.35 to the dollar at one point yesterday. This was its strongest level in 4 months. It's still hovering at those levels, trading at 18.37 to the greenback.
And Vodacom, their full-year profit has dipped.
It's taken a knock. Now, during the annual period, the group reported a near 11% decline in headline earnings per share. This was mainly due to foreign exchange rate losses, startup losses in Ethiopia, and it dealt with higher finance costs. Now, its top line grew by double digits, up 26%. That was boosted by its local operations, where it saw a jump in subscriber numbers. But concerns remain as consumers are under pressure. Vodacom, in the meantime, is pushing on with investments. Company CEO Shamil Jusub said they'll continue spending 13 to 14.5% of overall revenue on capital expenditure to expand and maintain its technological and network advantage. Another pressing issue at Vodacom is the Please Call Me case. The group said it has set aside money as a contingent liability, but it is confident of its prospects of success at the Constitutional Court, where it has appealed the Supreme Court's order to make a substantial offer to Please Call Me inventor Nkosana Makati.
And then upbeat tender activity is boosting Raubex.
So construction and infrastructure group Raubex has had a bumper year. During the full year period, revenue grew 13.8%, while earnings jumped over 21%. The upbeat showing comes as the group's order book grew to 25 billion rand. This basically means that Raubex has a strong pipeline of projects. Now, moving forward, it's expecting to get more hefty building contracts. It's also upbeat on the back of positive signs, including a pickup in commodity prices, increased road tender activity, as well as more sizable private sector power contracts that are coming through. So it's basically optimistic about its prospects, saying it doesn't even expect the national election to be as problematic as it initially expected. Investors welcomed the numbers, with its share price closing over 10% higher in yesterday's trade.
Ntalengla Chelep, thanks very much indeed. More from her through the week, of course, and more business news through the day here on SAFM. 24 minutes now to 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
All right, we're going to do an interview now. We planned to do a little earlier, and it's a very important story. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sekela Zikalala, has been on the scene of the George building collapse. As you know, it's claimed over 30 lives. The minister says the company in charge of the construction, Leatel Developments, was not registered with the Construction Industry Development Board, but there was no legal obligation for them to be registered with that board, because only companies working in the state sector actually have to be registered with the board at the moment. Well, Minister Sekela Zikalala is on the line for you now. Minister, good morning, and thank you very much for your time this Tuesday morning.
Yes, good morning, Stephen, and morning to your listeners.
Obviously, there'll be a full investigation into what happened. It'll take quite a long time. At this stage, is there anything that strikes you as obvious that we can do to make sure this kind of collapse doesn't happen again? Anything that you think we can do right now, from what we've seen, from what you saw yesterday, that can make construction in South Africa safer?
Well, firstly, is what you have said, is to standardize the practices and the conduct of contractors by ensuring that the standards that they are adhered to when they work for the public sector is also applied in the private sector. This is quite important because it helps us to ensure that people who are contractors have capacity, but they also invest in whatever project that they are doing to ensure that those projects help them to develop the pipeline of projects that they would undertake going forward. The second issue is to ensure that we collectively deal with the plight of those who are affected. Right now, more than 30 people. In fact, yesterday it was reported that 30 people lost their lives. We have a responsibility to ensure that we support them and the families as they have been left without breadwinners.
You know, Minister, how difficult construction can be. I mean, you've spoken to us before about delays in government projects because of various things that happen in construction when you're building schools and things like that. Is this maybe a moment to have a look at how the whole sector operates?
It is important that we continue to evaluate how the whole sector operates. And it is because of that reason that we brought all technical professionals yesterday who will be working in support of the effort that have been started by Minister Grootes, who his department is investigating the safety issues and the issues of employment. But we believe that there is a need to deal with now the issue of professionals in the construction sector to ensure that we look on whether each and every step was followed as expected.
I mean, there are some stories this morning about the engineer in charge that, I must say, the engineer themselves hasn't spoken yet. But do you think there may need to be a focus on all of that?
Yes. The structural engineer, we need to look on that issue. We also need to look on all issues, including the planning, the suitability of the land, and the municipality that deals with the issue of adopting the plans or the design. So all of those issues need to be considered.
Minister, if you look at what happens in the construction sector, and we know that in almost every part of the country you have criminals who use violence to force their way onto sites. We call them the construction mafia. The president's spoken about this. I think you've spoken about it too. So when you have a situation where people are able to do that, aren't we creating a really dangerous construction situation? Because I don't know if it happened in this case. I can't say that it did. But you have people who come to a construction site and they say to the people in charge, if you want to do this, you have to employ these people. You give me the money. And you don't know their qualifications. You don't know their names sometimes. I know your colleague, the policeman, Sebeke Cele, was upset that he couldn't get the full ID numbers of some workers, things like that. I mean, I just worry that what we haven't really thought of with the construction mafia is the impact it could be having on the actual safety of construction.
It compromises the standards that needs to be applied whenever we are undertaking construction projects. But in this case, it is not because of the construction mafia or anyone who came to demand work. That often happens when we are dealing with government projects. And in the private sector, it has not been so much. So we need to look specifically on issues that led to this situation. Yes, there are issues that cut across, that affect us as the whole country or in a number of areas, but we do need to pay particular attention to the situation that led to the collapse of the building in George.
Minister, thank you very much indeed for your time. So Closer Kalala is the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. You are this FM, 18 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, conversations coming through, many calls about load shedding and the EAF and all the rest. We've spoken also to Colleen Makubela. She seemed to suggest that we needed to be more neutral in the situation in Gaza. Other conversations this morning, of course, as you know, around the situation in George. Buti on the line from Johannesburg. Buti, hi. Electricity and streetlights, go for it.
Yes, Stephen, how are you?
I'm well. Go for it, Buti.
I'm okay, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen, I just want to raise this point, man. I've been looking around Johannesburg and seeing that the electricity infrastructure is actually collapsing.
Yeah.
And there's a clumsy work that is being done by these contractors, especially now lately. They are putting these overhead lines. Anyone who studies electrical engineering will know that there's a lot of disadvantages, especially when it comes to overhead lines. And the work that has been done, to be honest, the City Power, whoever, spend a lot of money sourcing these contractors to come and electrify the six lights, but it's not sustainable. The lights, you'll see the lights on for about a week or so, and then these cables are collapsing. To be honest, I think you guys need to take City Power accountable. We need to hold them accountable for this.
Okay,
it's just a wasteful expenditure, to be honest.
And I mean, you end up, if you have a problem, and we've all had problems from time to time, you end up calling them again and again and again because they've got to come back so many times to fix it.
Yeah.
All right, Buti, thank you. On the line from Johannesburg. Musi and Itaquini. Musi, hi. Eskom load shedding, go for it.
Good morning, Stephen.
Morning, Musi.
Yes, good morning. Stephen, this load shedding, this is what it says to me in my mind. Number one, load shedding has stopped because we are going to election. And after election, the load shedding will come back. That is the first part in my mind. And there's a second part in my mind again, is that there's this thing that if ANC happen to lose power and somebody else is being in charge of the country, that person will hire some people who will come inside Eskom and see what was happening before. So those people are told that, guys, stop it now because we might lose power and we might get caught. So let's just stop all what we're doing for now and we'll see what is happening after election. So it says to me, if ANC wins election, load shedding will come back in either way.
Sure. Okay, Musi, that's interesting. I hadn't seen it like that. Very strong denial from Eskom that is the case. Tabo and Kroonstad. Tabo, been a while. Hi. Energy availability?
Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, the lies that are peddled on this radio station are very much irritating. The Minister of Electricity was a whipping boy, called a Minister of Load Shedding last year when there was intense maintenance plans. And the ANC towards local government elections was actually punished by voters because there was intense load shedding during the elections. The ANC lost voters because of that.
Yeah, they themselves said that. Yeah.
Yes. Now that there's an improvement, now that the ANC, the minister is beginning to at least make a dent on the element of electricity, we are told that it should be a collective victory. The ESCOM must not take victory. It must be collective. But when there are failures, we're told that ESCOM must actually be the one that is taking responsible. But now that there's a positivity that is coming out of the plans of ESCOM, we're told that it must be a collective responsibility. They must not take the glory alone. I think people are dishonest and unfair to ESCOM.
So Tabo, I mean, I think as I understand what was being said there, is that ESCOM did, and we all can go into the deep history of it, but ESCOM couldn't produce enough power. Then other people started producing power, and that's taken some of the pressure off ESCOM. So, I mean, on that basis, if you look at it just in that way, is it not fair to say ESCOM was responsible for creating the crisis and ESCOM was responsible for resolving a large part of the crisis, but so were other people?
Stephen, we have duly criticized ESCOM. And to introduce private production of electricity is part of the government plan, is part of what ESCOM has agreed it needs to happen for us to actually reduce the load shedding. And those plans are bearing fruit. Why can't we give it to ESCOM to say that the plans that were put in place are beginning to actually make a dent on load shedding in South Africa, rather than to criticize, to say, no, it can't be a collective victory. It must be...
It depends if there are other factors, and I think there are other factors. I think it's rational to say there are other factors.
No, I agree, but I'm saying when there are failures, we don't say it's a collective failure of ESCOM. We are saying it's ESCOM responsibility.
All right. Tabo on the line from Kroonstad. Okay. Tokolo in Harrismith. Good morning, Tokolo. Welcome to SFM.
Yeah, Stephen, I just want to add to previous caller there. You see, people, I don't know when are we going to be satisfied. There is something that we are complaining. There is good thing we are complaining. Actually, what we want.
Yeah.
In life, guys, because we have to be now. There is a lot of things because of the election are coming now. That is why they're not shedding. Yeah. Why? That's true. It must be like that because if we can have this situation on election, then there's gonna be complaint again. So now things are coming right. People are complaining. Actually, I don't understand. Anyway, last question, Stephen. I just want to know because I hear that at where is that place where that building collapsed there
in George, yeah.
Yeah, we heard that there are some foreigners who were working there.
Yeah.
So now my question is, who's gonna be responsible for those who are not belongs to South Africa, to their country? Because I think now these people, they must stop using our tax money for this outcasted place.
So to call it what normally happens, and obviously it depends, but I think we would prepare the bodies and give them over to officials from their country. And I don't know if we pay for them to go home or if their country does. Just hold on to call. I also know that if I, as a South African, were in another country and something happened to me, that country's government would help our country. It goes both ways, is my point.
No, but in our South Africa, man, it looks like now we are spending too much because there is a lot of outsider here, and they are still using our taxpayer. We should have used that money for something, not fixing our country. But now we are busy fixing other people's country, man. Look, we are in trouble now. We have to take that money and fix our problem in South Africa.
Okay, but Tokolo, I think as a human being, I think we have a duty to help a human being who's passed on.
Yes, but look, when are we gonna get help for us? Because look what we are having now. We have a lot of problems, but still we are still busy helping other people from outside. They must be the way they belong, man. Come on, Tim.
Oh, Tokolo. I mean, once you go down that road, you're saying that humans can't move around. And I understand the argument. We've had it many times. But I think we need to be human in this case. Tokolo and Harry Smith, thank you. Chris and Peter Maritzburg. The NHI, the president signing it tomorrow. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Steve. And firstly, I must agree with you. There's definitely going to be legal challenges to the NHI.
Yeah.
But my biggest worry is false promises.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is especially how you summarized it just after 6 when you started, that people can go to any facility and the state will pay. What effectively that says is that people will flock to the private sector because, let's be truthful, that's where the quality that's where the perceived quality of service is being provided. But all in all, I think we need to accept that NHI is not a panacea. It's not going to solve our problems. Our staff, our healthcare workers remain overworked, underpaid, and unappreciated. And that is not going to change. Our clinics have got no medicines. And the way we are delivering services still is not responsive to the needs. I will make an example. The mental health services are still not provided for in primary health care. And many of our youth, we know, I come from KZN, are suffering because of the levels of violence. And therefore we need to respond. So it's not going to be that. And I really think and I hope this is going to be an awakening moment where South Africans come together and really define the healthcare that is responsive and serves everyone.
All right, Chris and Peter Maritzburg, let's see. Thank you very much indeed. 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very heavy run through Midrand today with an earlier collision scene at Samrand. That was a Bucky overturning, nasty crash. Traffic remains heavy from Brockfontein interchange as you swing off the N1 after John Foster through Brockfontein all the way down to that crash at Samrand Road. The N4 was also a focus of our attention. It still is. This is the Emelafeni Highway driving into Pretoria. Big queues this morning from Rousseau Street through towards the N1. There's a lot of congestion around Vartamea Street. Motorists trying to get out of the N4 or struggling to get into it. Use Pretoria Street to the north. Looks a lot better through that Colbane Valley area as an alternative route in, if you like. The N3 from Alex down to Galulis is heavy after an earlier crash. It has just been cleared. Traffic should start to move, but it is very thick. Durban, the N3 inbound from Pavilion through to Sherwood's heavy. The M4 Southern Freeway up through Congela. Big traffic this morning in towards the CBD area. The other side of town, you've got some delays that stay with us on the way towards King Shaka Airport. That is a crash between Gateway and the Subaya exit causing that delay. Cape Town, a collision involving a truck and a couple of vehicles on Bosmansdam Road Bridge over the N7. That's chaotic. Bosmansdam both ways. Freiburger, Edgemead Drive coming out of Edgemead. The N7 north and south, very heavy into the Bosmansdam off-ramps as well. And a crash going into Cape Town on the N2 at Hospital Bend, just before Hospital Bend. So the N2 inbound's really bad. Behind that, the M5 is heavy from Ottery, Kenilworth this morning, trying to get into the N2. Routes like Lisbeck Parkway up to the highway are bad. Behind that, Klipfontein Road. Behind that, Rapenburg and Forest Drive out of Pinelands. That whole sort of observatory, Mowbray, Rosebank area, top of Rondebosch, all really heavily backed up as a result of that crash on the N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
7 minutes to 8 now the time. Well, plenty going on this morning, and we try and sort of keep in touch with the families of the Enyobeni Tavern victims. We've been following, of course, what happened to them, and just such an important story, as you know. One of the things that now has happened is that the relatives, the parents of the victims of what happened in that tavern when all of those when so many young people died in that very strange incident now 2 years ago in June 2022 in Scenery Park in East London. The families have formed their own organisation, an NPO, essentially to try and really make sure that people don't drink underage. So it's going to campaign against underage drinking. Kululekile Nkantana is a father of one of the victims, joins us now. Kululekile, good morning. Thank you for your time. All right, we'll have them on the line in just a moment. Sorry about that. I thought that they were ready to go. I think they are there now. Kululekile, hi, good morning.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to your listeners as well.
Well, thank you. What are you going to try and do with your organisation? What are you campaigning for?
Well, after the incident, we still find out that the underage drinking, as well as allowing the underage children into the establishment, is still happening. So it is our aim to try and minimize or to stop that.
Okay. I mean, you have to really change our sort of drinking culture in South Africa. I mean, people tell me about, parents sending their children to the tavern to go and get them beers, things like that. I mean, there's a lot that we need to change.
Well, really, there's quite a lot that we need to change. I mean, including the laws as well. I mean, it doesn't help us to have some laws there, but now nobody is monitoring as to really are we following those laws that are there. So we will try and then work with the communities to try and minimize and stop that.
Do you believe we need to change the drinking age, to raise the drinking age from 18 to maybe 21?
Well, yes, I do believe, because you find out that, a child who is 18, he or she, they are still young, because most of them, they are still at school, not even at tertiary, they are still at high school. Then from there, they will go to tertiary. Even in tertiary, when you are in tertiary, you are still at school. You need to concentrate on your studies. It's only after you finish your studies that somebody could be allowed, to start drinking or to go into those places.
One of the things to do this, there are different ways of doing this. Yes, we need to enforce the law. We can look at changing the law. The other thing is to just give young people something else to do. And Kululekile, I'm no expert. I'm an old person. I can't talk about young people. But it seems to me that, they need something else to do on weekends, some other way to celebrate, sporting activities, things like that. Would that make a difference?
Well, most definitely it will make a difference. You can see in other communities that children are being taken to those sporting codes. It is encouraging. There are people out there who do care, who are trying to organize children so that they can stay away from those things. So they would organize some sporting activities. It's quite important, more especially now, because it's totally different from our days. In our days, I was a very, very active sport person. I played quite rugby a lot, cricket, So even on Sundays after church, we will go and play sport. But in these days, there's very, very minimal of such things. So those are things that we need to go back to and most definitely make sure that we are doing them in the communities, but at the same time being supported by the government.
Kululekile, thank you very much indeed, and strength to you. I know it's been such a difficult time for you and so many others in that community. Kululekile in Kantana,
thank you very much.
Father of one of the victims of the tragedy there in Scenery Park, the Inyubeni Tavern tragedy. 2 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Lungelo on the line from KwaZulu-Natal. Lungelo, hi. Voter education you want to talk about?
Yeah, Stephen, good morning and good morning to your listeners. So it's interesting from a brand perspective, especially in terms of the MK party and the face of Jacob Zuma being on the ballot.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the history, the most votes the ANC has had was when his face was on the ballot.
Indeed, in 2009, yes.
Now it's different where his face, as well as that of the president, will also be on the ballot.
In 2004, actually, yes. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. Go
now, another dynamic is the IFP with the face of Nkwana Mangosuthu will no longer be there. In fact, they'll have the president, Shabisa. But if you look at popularity and from a brand perspective, Untuli, the premier candidate, is the one who's most seen or advertised. But on the posters, it's not him.
You're causing all sorts of trouble for me this morning, yes?
Of particular grannies who look for the face of Mangosuthu won't find it, who look for the face of Ntulu who's being branded about and won't find it. But there'll be Shabisa, whom is not as well known to your basic voters on the ground. And then who will be the alternative? Guess what? Jacob Zuma is right there. They know him. They've always known him. Where does that vote go? Now, immediately when you look at voter education and an understanding of you vote for the party, not necessarily for the face, I'm also not sure whether voters, especially your rural voters, will necessarily not put an X next to the face of Jacob Zuma and opt for the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in as much as he is representing the ANC. So
okay, but Lungelo, I mean, the logo's there too, and I think the colours are very different from MK and the IFP, for example.
No, that's true, but then people naturally gravitate towards the face. I think this is why the MK party is fighting so much for the face of Jacob Zuma to remain on the ballot, because literally that whole fight is about that.
But he's already, he's already is on the ballot. He may not be a candidate for parliament, but that doesn't affect the ballot paper.
So would he remain on the ballot even if he wasn't a candidate?
If he wasn't a candidate, yes. If he wasn't the leader of MK, no.
Okay. Going to be an interesting dynamic, though, if you look at the brands themselves and what faces are necessarily familiar with individuals.
No, sure. Longelo on the line from KwaZulu-Natal. Very interesting. You are this FM leading the conversation. Don't forget the idea of a national dialogue in half an hour. Just gone 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, 6 victims identified in George building collapse and Constitutional Court issues directives in Zuma matter. Good morning. The George municipality says 6 of the 32 workers who died when a partially built building collapsed last week have been identified. Municipal spokesperson Chantal Edwards says they are setting up plans to speed up the identification process. Yesterday marked a week since the disaster. Edwards says 20 workers are still unaccounted for while 12 others are in hospital.
Fingerprints, DNA testing and photographs of unique markings such as tattoos and clothing items are some of the methods used to identify the deceased. Forensic pathology services are not limited to the Victoria Street disaster in George, but also include other cases that happen on a daily basis. It is now confirmed that 6 of the deceased have been positively identified, and this information has been through the system. We are experiencing difficulties in obtaining accurate names of individuals missing or deceased due to the building collapse. We urgently request families who have lost contact with their loved ones to come to the George Civic Centre on York Street.
Please note the following story contains graphic details which could upset sensitive listeners, including children. Some Sheldon village residents at Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga are calling for justice after the brutal killing of a 2-year-old girl in the area. The toddler was allegedly burnt with hot water by her stepfather and later succumbed to the burn wounds at a hospital. Community member and Better Residents Association leader Delta Mukwena says they want both the mother and the stepfather behind bars.
No one is behind bars now. We went to the police station to verify whether there is a police case or not. Then we found that no, there's no police case. We requested some of the delegates to go to the mother of the victim. So then the mother of the victim must come and explain why she didn't even open the police case. It was the police that then they advised us to request the mother of the child to come and open the case.
The extradition case for the Ndemande siblings accused of killing South African rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tibelo Tibbs Mutswane is expected to return to the Manzini Magistrates Court in Eswatini this morning. Siyabonga and Malusi are wanted in the country for the murder of the duo and 2 others on separate incidents in KwaZulu-Natal last year. They are facing 4 counts of murder, attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. During their last court appearance last month, the defence indicated they are intending to oppose the extradition application filed by the South African government. In election-related news now. The Constitutional Court has asked the Electoral Commission, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma to make written submissions over statements made by the IEC's Commissioner Janet Love by the end of business today. This is in the matter which is set to determine Zuma's eligibility to stand for public office. The MK Party, through its legal counsel, argued before the Con Court last week that Love was biased after she said the former president would not be eligible to stand for public office due to his 15-month sentence meted out by the Constitutional Court. Zoleka Godashe reports.
There are 7 questions that the Apex Court has put before the parties. Among them is whether Love ought to have refrained from expressing a view on Zuma's eligibility, whether she ought to have recused herself from participating in the IEC's determination of the former president's eligibility, and what effect would her participation have on the IEC's determination of Zuma's eligibility. The legal counsel for the respondents on Friday argued that Love made a premature announcement in relation to the disqualification of the former president when probed on the matter during a press briefing. The electoral body is seeking clarity and the correct interpretation of Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution. Judgment was reserved.
2 people have been injured during clashes over water supply at Pugwane and Madonsi villages outside Malamulele in Limpopo. The injured are described to be in a stable condition in hospital. According to information, Pugwane villagers accuse their counterparts of using concrete to block the main water pipeline, which supplies water to their village and in Ntlabeni areas. The clashes started when the villagers dug up the water pipeline to remove the alleged concrete obstruction. The Vembe District Municipality says they are investigating. And finally, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has urged all parties in Sudan to immediately stop the fighting and resume ceasefire negotiations without further delay. He expressed grave concern over the outbreak of fighting in Al Fasher, North Darfur, which has put 800,000 civilians at risk. Sharon Bryce Peace reports.
The Secretary-General further pointed out that civilians in the area were already facing a looming famine and the consequences of over a year of war. He reminded all parties of their obligations under international humanitarian law to protect civilians and called on them to allow the civilian population to move to safer areas. The UN chief also requested that all parties facilitate safe, rapid and unimpeded humanitarian access to all civilians in need in Al-Fasher, across Darfur and Sudan.
Recapping the top story, the George municipality says 6 of the 32 workers who died when a partially built building collapsed last week have been identified. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, soccer tonight, Mamelodi Sundowns aim to extend their winning streak in a high-stakes clash against Royal AM, and top-ranked golfer Scottie Scheffler gearing up for the PGA Championship at Valhalla. We'll find out more just before 8:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The crash on Joburg's N3 South at Galulis has been cleared. It did form a queue right back as far as Alex. So the route is busy, but the collision scene, the root cause of all of that, delays out of the way. South of Joburg, crash on the N12 near Kamaro Street, moving through from Reading interchange direction, Southgate and Soweto. It stays pretty heavily backed as well. The N4 into Pretoria stays really busy through Vartamar Street towards the N1, although that is starting to lighten. That might just be as the volumes drop off, but it has been particularly heavy. Durban, the Southern Freeway inbound, heavy today from Kongela up towards the central CBD area. N3 from Pavilion through to Sherwood, very busy, and major delays between Gateway and Sabaya. That's a crash in the roadworks, a big hold up there on your way towards the airport. In Cape Town, very heavy congestion around the N2 highway route. It's a collision before Hospital Bend, so the N2 inbound backs from Robert Sobukwe anyway, just after the airport really, but behind that all the approaches to the highways are jammed and those approaches to the approaches are jammed. So heavy traffic around Pinelands, around Mowbray, and particularly around the Rosebank area. Routes like the M5 queuing up towards that N2 from as far back as Ottery. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning, Tuesday morning, you're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Plenty to come in the next little while. We'll speak to aware.org, just continue that conversation started by Kululekile earlier about underage drinking. We'll just speak to them a little bit about that. Also, I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I mean, we've seen former President Thabo Mbeki, we've seen many other people over the last couple of weeks, years really, saying we should have a national dialogue, a second CADESA to help us resolve our problems. Well, we'll look at that issue in your mediated conversation around 20 minutes from now. I think it's an important conversation. To me, and it's one of the questions I'll put to our guests is, you know, when a former president says it, it's important. When a former president who's from the party that's still in government says it, I mean, it really sort of underscores the seriousness of the situation we're in. But I think there's serious questions to ask about whether it would actually work. You know, whether it make a difference. I don't know if you've got a strong view on that. The NHI, big talking point this morning. Of course, the president going to have that public signing ceremony tomorrow, I think 2 o'clock, to sign the NHI bill into law. Your views on that on 086 000 2032. Good morning, 9 minutes after 8.
Unlock new ways to drive your business forward with high-quality fuel and lubricants, paired with exceptional support from Astron Energy Business Solutions.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, this week, the Nampo Agricultural Exhibition underway in Bothaville in the Free State. One of the companies that's exhibiting there is Astron Energy. They provide fuel and lubricants. This conversation is brought to you by Astron Energy. In our studio, their General Manager for Commercial and Industrial, Akhola Mnyendeki. Akhola, good morning. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
What role do you guys play in the industry at the moment? How would you describe what you do?
In terms of the role that Astron Energy plays in the industry, I mean, a bit of context. So a couple of years ago, we had 6 refineries, and we were importing around 48% of our demand from, let's say, main fuels, so your diesel and petrol. Right now, we are importing around 70% of our diesel, and a lot of the refineries have shut down, leaving probably us as being the coastal refinery left on the South African shores, together with Sasol, of course. So we play a big role in ensuring or enabling energy security with regards to hydrocarbons in South Africa.
I mean, I just sort of worry slightly, and I don't know if I'm right to worry that our refining capacity is declining so significantly.
Yeah, I think it is concerning. I think the entities that have exited the country probably have done so on the basis of their own proprietary decisions. On the flip side, I think we as Astron Energy are probably in the next coming months will be making further additional investments into our refinery to bring about cleaner fuels and again to increase the production capacity of hydrocarbons in the country.
Okay, so you're putting more money in, you're going to get more out of it.
Well, I think we believe in South Africa. Whilst the company on the downstream side has been in South Africa since 2018. From a group perspective, I think we brought in our first cargo around 1911. And so we are optimistic about South Africa's future. And it's on that basis that we are adding additional investment around the securitization of energy and hydrocarbons in South Africa.
What do you do to help clients? What kind of products do you have?
Well, we typically don't have a silver bullet for every client. And so, but we I think how we help clients is probably around bespoke solutions per the customer requirements around energy and around lubricants.
Okay, so, I mean, things like that. In the agriculture sector specifically, farmers, companies, and agro-processing space, I mean, you're about to go down to Bothaville, I'm sure, for NAMPO. It's a huge event. How big are you in that space?
We're very big in that space. We supply lubricants. We have over 103 years of research and development that go into our lubricants. And lubrication is a big part of farming. And so it's a place we play in probably on an integrated basis when you look at lubricants as well as our fuel supply offer.
And for that industry in particular, there's certain requirements.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for farmers, you have a finite period within which you need to plant and harvest. And so if during that period your implements or your equipment is out because of maintenance, I think you lose out on the window of opportunity, especially farmers. Some of the produce in South Africa gets exported. So we enable customers there by ensuring that they have increased machine availability time. And I think our lubricants performance, when you look at the Delo Gold Ultras as well as some of the greases that the guys use on the vehicles and planting implements, last longer on the field and last beyond the harvesting or planting periods, so that the farmers get their return on investment on their equipment, as well as reduce total cost of ownership.
NAMPO is a big event. I mean, there's nothing really else like it, I think, in Southern Africa. I mean, it's a big opportunity. You're going to have the whole farming community there.
Yeah.
I mean, literally everybody.
Yeah. I think it's probably the biggest, 100% the biggest farming expo in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think as part of supporting and providing solution for that sector, I think it's important for us to be in the sidelines with the farmers. And food security together with energy security are probably two of the topical issues that we are facing as a country.
It's so interesting because, I mean, you find yourself working in one space, which is lubricants and fuels.
Yeah.
You find yourself at a farmers' expo.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of says something about how the world actually works.
Yeah.
And then also, for the moment at least, the role that hydrocarbons play in an economy.
Yeah. I mean, the sector employs somewhere around north of 10,000 people, contributes, I think, in excess of 300 billion rands. So the sector is quite sizable, and it's also key for South Africa's growth. I mean, when you look at 2023 versus 2022 numbers, the growth in fuels is probably aligned with the growth in the economy itself, where we're seeing around a 0.8% growth in overall fuels. So it's an important enabler to South Africa's production.
It's very interesting. Atkola, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Really appreciate it. Atkola Mdendeki is the General Manager for Commercial and Industrial for Astron.
This segment was fueled by Astron Energy, your partner in high-quality fuel, lubricants, and efficient business solutions. Need a fuel and lubricants partner that increases uptime and reduces cost? Unlock new ways to fuel business success in the mining, agriculture, manufacturing, aviation, transport, and logistics industries. Partner with Astron Energy for reliable supply, high-quality products, technical support, and ethical practices. Visit us at NAMPO and RFA 2024 this May. Let's build a bright future together. Astron Energy Business Solutions.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
KG on the line from Mangaung. KG, hi, good morning. The NHI, what do you think about it?
I'm afraid, Stephen, the problem with our country is we have a launching government.
A launching government?
Yes.
Okay.
All they know how to do is launch a pothole eradication program. 5 years ago, our country still riddled with a lot of potholes. You launch this economic recovery, whatever, the economy is still not growing. You launch this education system, the education system is still not functioning. So my personal view as far as the NHI is concerned is this, Stephen. I don't think we need a new policy, or we need anything fancy. We just need to go back to the basics. We need a situation where when you arrive at a hospital, you will find a person called a porter who will come and check if you need a wheelchair, or you can walk on yourself, or you need a stretcher. We can put, somebody said yesterday, the hospitals, the health workers are overworked. There's too much work on their table and everything. We can put 1,000 nurses in each clinic and in each hospital and in each health facility. But if the attitudes are not the correct type of attitude, I don't see the situation improving at all. So I'll be very happy as a person who has medical aid to go to my local public facility here, your Pelnomi hospital. If the type of treatment I'm going to, the quality of the care I'm going to get there, the place is clean. Everybody understands that the reason for being at work is to actually go and perform some kind of work, not to go and visit the workplace and pass the time. And by the way, Stephen, if our government was serious about the NHI, they would not have been busy at Tembisa looting that 1 billion rand.
Yeah.
They would not have been busy during the COVID pandemic with this something 5 scandal that involves the former Minister of Health. They would have taken that money to lay the foundation and the groundwork, train these porters that I'm talking about, get cleaners in, get the equipment in, get your enrolled nurses, get your staff nurses, get your professional nurses, get your doctors, get all the systems in place. And then when the president finally finds a pen somewhere tomorrow to sign, we are good to go. Everything is in good order. So I don't understand how is this signing suddenly going to voila, we wake up and everything is working perfectly. Unfortunately, there's this thing in our language called lechoba that is used by traditional healers. I think it is made from a horse's tail, and then you attach it to a stick. I cannot wave that thing around, Stephen, and a miracle happens and everything is working the way it should be. There has to be consistent, deliberate effort, work every day over a period of time to establish systems and get everything working, and you keep on working at it without interfering with it, without stopping the hard work and everything. So I'm not really encouraged by this pen that is found for the signature tomorrow.
All right. No, KG, I like the way you put that. Thank you. On the line from Mangaung. He's not convinced about the pen that's been found. The president said he was looking for his pen. Took a long time to find it. That signing ceremony tomorrow. Anyone supporting the NHI? I'm sure there are people who do. Maputle on the line from Tsone. Maputle, been a little while. Elections. Hi, good morning.
Morning, Stephen, Taft, the scientist, Grootes. Good morning.
Oh, Maputle, you know, I'm looking out over the flat plain of Joburg this morning.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yesterday you had a scientist in the studio. I'm going to come to elections. You spoke about the auroras or aurori.
Yes.
Now, the scientist was hard explaining how they are formed and the earth spinning and all these things.
Mm.
I mean, I say that's not true.
Really?
Those things. Let me tell you what's getting. You know the HAARP, HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Yeah.
In America. These people, they got transmitters that are sending pulses of frequency up the ionosphere. Ionosphere is about 60 kilometers from the ground. Yes. They are simulating this, changes in the atmosphere. That's why you see these colors and all these things, like you saw in Transbar yesterday. Now, they've been, doing those experiments from the 8th of May. They're going to end those experiments by the 10th or 11th. That's what they say in their website. Now, the reason why they are doing that thing, Stephen, the reason why they are doing that thing, you've heard about what you call Project Bluebeam, where they're going to project holograms in the sky. You know, those auroras, they serve as a canvas. Where they're projecting. No, just listen to me, Stephen. Just 1 minute, please. Because these things are there. To tell you why these things are happening is because they want to project hologram images of what they call apparitions or the ghost-like images, the saints. The second coming of Jesus Christ you're gonna see Jesus Christ in the sky. If you don't believe me, Google now the Vatican website. They'll be publishing a document on the 17th next week on Friday.
Okay.
That's all things I'm gonna say. We are preparing for the second coming. All these things that you are seeing is an illusion.
All right.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Maputle, thank you. Maputle, who, is, how do I put this into interested in science, phoned us to convince us once that the world was flat, so take it from whence it comes is all I'm going to say. It's a free country. You can believe what you want to believe. You know, my job is to force people to prove their comments factually. So, let's see it like that. 23 minutes after 8.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
The organisation aware.org, which is an organisation, I think, funded by the liquor industry, if I remember correctly, that actually tries to encourage responsible drinking. They're launching what they say is a new game to stop underage drinking. Mokeba Tulo is the head of brand at aware.org. Mokeba, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good to speak to you again, and good morning to your listeners.
How does this game stop people who are underage from drinking?
Well, I mean, the game doesn't, right? If we did have a silver bullet to make underage people stop drinking, we certainly would make use of it. But the thinking behind the game is, looking at where young people are and looking at how we can engage with them in a meaningful way where they are able to pay attention to us, where the messaging that we are delivering to them is something that they're able to listen to. So even in the way in which it is delivered, the channel in which the messaging is delivered, we look at ways in which impact can be created. And this game, in the way that it is interactive, in the way that it finds young people in a space where they're in, helps us to do that.
Okay, I mean, I understand, there are lots of initiatives like this, but we're really trying to change the drinking culture, and that's really hard to do, isn't it? I mean, there's a culture out there, it's been around for many, many years, that really encourages people under the age of 18 to drink.
Yeah, I mean, undeniably so, Stephen. I think one of the things that we try really hard to combat is this idea that drinking is cool, especially when it comes to under 18. I mean, we've got 3 pillars that we work with, and the under 18 program is our flagship program. And there we have 0 tolerance to under 18 drinking. And so when we start to look at how to change the behavior, we have to start dismantling the thinking behind the behavior, the drivers of the behavior, And we have to start looking at what we need to address in order for us to be able to do something or say something that might actually work. I mean, for years we've run, and by we I don't mean just Aware, I mean the community at large has run No to Under 18 campaigns of all sorts, and we've been trying to spread this message. I mean, caregivers, parents, we've got millions of messages from people that engage with young people, and everyone is looking for the secret to how to stop young people from drinking. And we believe... Sorry, Stephen.
I'm sorry, Mokebe, I interrupted you. Do you think we should change the drinking age to 21?
I mean, I think we do get drawn into this conversation every now and then. I do not currently believe that the problem is the drinking age per se. I think that we need to get right where we are at the moment. I mean, if people are drinking under the age of 18, changing it to 21 is not going to improve the situation at all. I believe that in order for such a decision to be agreed to, we have to have the correct parties around the table, and we have to have some sort of scientific evidence and, global best practice in similar geographies that inform this decision. So no, I don't think changing the drinking age is going to be the thing to solve our problems.
Mokebe, thank you. Mokebe Tulo is the head of brand at aware.org. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Sundowns in action tonight.
Yes, they're facing Royal AM, and coach Rulani Mokoena is standing firm in his defence of star striker Peter Shalulile, despite experiencing a quieter season with 13 goals, a decline from his usual prolific scoring. Shalulile's crucial goal against Royal AM last weekend underscored his ongoing value to the team. Mokoena highlights the necessity of consistent support for players through all phases of their career, urging the fans to remember Shalulile's significant contributions even on his off days. Now, with a commendable track record nearing 90 goals for Sundowns, Shalulile's impact on the field is undeniable. Mokoena reiterating.
From the criticism of not playing Emabena more regularly, I have to be exempt from that. Because if there is a coach that has shown over the years that he believes in youngsters, it is me. The record is there to speak for itself. And I think that's Peter. If there is someone that is exempt from this Mamelodi Sundowns squad, from criticism about not scoring goals, it's Peter Shalulile, because the track record speaks for itself.
More soccer action tonight at 9 p.m. Manchester City will play Tottenham, and City have lost all 4 Premier League matches they've played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but the defending champions must change when they visit the North London side. Second, with 85 points from 36 matches, City are 1 point behind Arsenal, who have played an extra game. Now, a win at Spurs would give City the advantage going into the league's final weekend as they seek a record 4th title in a row. Here's Pep Guardiola.
The mindset is easy. So in terms of we don't win, we are not going to win the Premier League. And this is what we have to do to know exactly what they are as a team. And like it's so demanding, always have been in there, but especially this season because they are more proactive than was in the past with the different managers. And they are so aggressive, and it doesn't matter what happens result, they are losing 4-0 in Anfield, and they continue to do the game plan, stick what they believe, and the difficulty is there, but at the same time, we know we are playing for.
And finally, golf. World number 1 Scottie Scheffler back in action for the PGA Championship, fresh off a personal and professional high. Having recently become a father, Scheffler is looking to capture his 3rd major title this week at Valhalla.
It's a pretty amazing feeling. It was fairly challenging leaving the house this morning, but I'm here. I'm committed to playing this week. I'm excited to be out here competing. I told my little man when I was leaving, I don't want to leave, but I got to leave. When I'm called to come out here and do things to the best of my ability, and so showing up this week, especially with the weather forecast the next couple of days, I knew I had to be here today to get some practice in.
Look out for more sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. A national dialogue. Is it a good idea? Will it change anything? You with SAFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, trade union Ehawin Parliament says it's against any attempt to suspend the Secretary to Parliament, Xolile George. It says there are attempts to effect the suspension before the end of the 6th Parliament. The George municipality says 6 of the 32 workers who died when a partially built building collapsed last week have been identified. Municipal spokesperson Chantal Edwards says they are setting up plans to speed up the identification process. And civil society organisation Not In My Name says there's no political will to effectively deal with crime, especially in townships. This follows the killing of 5-year-old Ditebugo Junior Palane during a hijacking incident in Shoshanguve north of Pretoria. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty heavy getting into Sandton this morning from Randburg and Bryanston. Route Peter Place, Republic Road, both jammed down to a very busy and heavy Winnie Mandela for a turn onto Sandton Drive in towards the Parkmore area. Crash on the N12, southern bypass, just past Kamaro Street. Quite a backlog from the Reading interchange. That's a big queue going from the Reading interchange direction Southgate and Soweto, if you like. And the M1 South is still quite slow coming through Brockfontein towards Samrand. All lanes of that crash scene earlier near Shell Ultra have been reopened, so all lanes are open, but it's still a live incident on the side of the road, so it will take a while for things to normalise there. Heading up towards the airport of Durban, on your way to King Shaka International, quite a heavy queue. Crash before Sabaya in the roadworks. Traffic is parking back past the Gateway. N2 South has a breakdown at Spaghetti Junction. It's clogged all the way back to Getty Road. And Cape Town, a couple of issues this morning. One is a crash on the N2 inbound around Mowbray Main Road. Traffic remains heavy from the airport outbound after Mowbray Main before Lisbeth Parkway. There's a crash there, so backlogs through Hospital Bend area this morning. A lot of congestion Pinelands, Mowbray, Rosebank as motorists deal with this sort of congestion on the N2 corridor. And then if you're around the Justenburg area trying to get in or out of Stellenbosch, quite a big crash in on the Kliphivel Road by the N1 outbound off-ramp, and there's a lot of disruption to traffic, particularly Stellenbosch bound on the 304 route into that scene. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial *120 *3 to hash to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC1.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Am I left or right-brained? I'm leaning right. Right? However, I do have some left-brain tendencies. Perhaps I'm left-brained with right-brain tendencies. Am I overthinking this? I don't want to be caught underthinking it. Or maybe I'm overthinking about underthinking the overthinking. Which am I?
At RMB, the simple answer is both. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity that doesn't make you choose, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Are you exposed to weak, flat, downright embarrassing jokes? You know, from that one friend who insists he knows why the chicken crossed the road. Or that Danny who ends up laughing alone from a joke last heard when polyphonic ringtones ruled the world. Are you tired of answering the door to strange characters and objects in the world of knock knock? Those dad jokes that are like a fly with no legs? They just don't land. You don't have to suffer from unfunny jokes any longer. Tune in to Live at the Apollo Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. on S3 and give your lungs the laugh they deserve. Channel your inner comic with BBC Primetime, only on S3.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
24 minutes now to 9 the time. Time for your mediated conversation this Tuesday morning. Over the weekend, President Thabo Mbeki again said he believed that after the election, South Africa needs what's often called a national dialogue, or some kind of discussion that would take place outside of the normal political cycle. He says this is because no one single political party has the answers to our different problems. Mbeki's only the latest in a long line of people who've called for a national dialogue, sometimes called a second CODESA or even an economic CODESA, after the series of talks that led to the political system we have now. However, there may also be problems with such a suggestion. It could perhaps be a distraction if there is such a national dialogue. For example, if it came to a conclusion that certain policies should change, would the government of the day actually accept it? So then, do we need a new national discussion, a national dialogue? Would it make any difference? First this morning, someone who does appear to support the idea. Omri Makwale is a veteran member of the ANC and a political commentator. Then, someone who believes it may not help. Peter Atadmontoto is from the analysis agency Grootes. And finally, Ebrahim Fakir is an election analyst at the Elections Institute of Southern Africa. We start then with the case for a national dialogue. Omri Makwale. Omri, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Morning, Stephen, and thanks for the opportunity.
Sure. From what I can see, from what you've written, you believe we do need a national dialogue outside of the elections. Why do you believe that?
Well, I think that first, the elections from 1994 up to now has not really delivered, in most cases, most of the things. And so that's why we need this discussion, this dialogue, because I think that the issues that should be addressed are the issues that were not addressed in 1994, and especially on my side is the parliamentary electoral laws. That is the cause of all the problems we have, I believe.
When we see supporting this idea, do you think everyone agrees on what it should be about? I mean, you suggest that it should be about changing the parliamentary system. Some people might suggest it actually should be about race, or it should be about the economy. So what I'm trying to get to is, do we need one process, or do we need separate dialogues?
I think in principle there's nothing wrong having discussions on the economy, having discussions also on the electoral law. There's nothing wrong in that. But the issue, the key issue in South Africa is lack of individual accountability of politicians. Lack of individual accountability of politicians. And that's what has brought us to where we are at the moment. Because all these scandals from 1994 up to now, whether you call travel date scam scandals, where the MPs were traveling illegally and doing all the things of the Sarafina, the Klokwe municipality, the Amstel, all these scandals and corruption-related issues happened because we don't have individual accountability of politicians. Those politicians are still in office. Some of them retired in office despite all that litany of the wrong things that happened. And so I believe that, it can only be addressed by the parliamentary laws, but it doesn't stop us from discussing economic issues as to how to run, state-owned enterprises, for instance. Why should we have a Transnet that is not competent? How do we expect to take things to the harbor when our Transnet is not competent? And when Eskom is not competent, how do we expect to improve labor and have work, unemployment cut when the power stations are not operating properly? All those things, we can discuss them under the economic discussions. But I believe the key issue is the parliamentary electoral law. And that's what I would propose we would take to that dialogue, put it forward. Let's change this electoral act that has not given us, pleasure since 1994.
Okay, so I mean, in the 1990s, right? And I mean, I was a very young person then. I was still at school, but I remember very clearly, the apartheid government released Nelson Mandela. It was clear there had to be a national discussion. But it was also clear at the time, or at least it was clear to me, who had to do the discussing. So you had to have the government of the time at one side. You had to have the ANC. There were other organizations, of course. But it was clear who had to talk. I mean, the IFP was there. Who would do the talking now? So if we don't use the political parties that we have, who does the actual talking? In other words, what I'm really getting to is who's represented. And I would suggest that one group of people that is often unrepresented in our national debates is people who are unemployed. And there are 10 million people who are unemployed. They would have to be represented. Who would represent them? If you see, Omri, where I'm going with this, I worry that it may be simple to say we're going to do this, but I don't know if we know who's going to actually come and do the talking.
Yes, I think that's a fair point, Stephen, that the delegates to this conference or to this dialogue, who will be the delegates? And at the moment, I think that it's my own view. I don't know what former President Mbeki is thinking of course. I would say that all these political parties that are existing should be represented. The NGOs, the churches should be represented, and the unemployed, people don't really have organizations per se that I'm aware of. But I think the churches, the NGOs, the political parties should discuss the way forward, common ground for all South Africans, irrespective of race and color, irrespective of religious differences. We must find a common way forward that will suit South Africa as a country, that will make South Africa a prosperous country. And that's what we should look for. And I think that this is why I believe that at the heart of this is the reform of the Electoral Act. As it stands now, it's not good enough for the country. Otherwise, we would not be having all this rampant corruption taking place, and we, the citizens, are helpless.
So we have a democracy. So bless you. So before, the government we have now has been democratically elected. The government we have after the election will be democratically elected too. What happens if we have an election? Then we have a national dialogue, and the national dialogue comes up with findings or makes decisions that the government doesn't like, and the government says, well, we're democratically elected. We don't have to accept this because we're democratically elected, if you see what I mean. So what I'm worried about is that I don't think the apartheid government in the 1990s could really have vetoed something that was decided at Grootes. I mean, they tried, I think, at one point, but they couldn't really do it. Isn't the situation different now because the government we have is democratically elected?
Yes, well, it is different. I agree with you because the government that will be elected after May 29 can defy whatever the conference dialogue recommends. They've got that right to defy that. And that has happened, of course. For me, in the ANC, that has happened. When there's conferences and put resolutions, and all those resolutions were defied by the leadership at the Junior House. So that can also happen with this coming dialogue, that we can have a dialogue, and the people who are in charge, who have won the election, can say, no, we don't really want that because we won the election. It's possible. But I think the idea is we have to involve mass action, the NGOs, to change the things for the better for South Africans. Even if whoever will be winning, who have won elections, if they don't, want to accept some of the things. In any countries, campaigns are there, mass actions are there. To reform the U.S. Elections, to reform the UK standard, it's all involved, mass actions. Whether it's France, it all involves mass action. At the end, if we don't get the dialogue resolutions to be adopted by whoever would have won elections, then we go through mass actions to demand reforms. That's how we should do it,
Omri Makwale, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate the time. ANC veteran and a political commentator, as you can hear. All right, well, continue your mediated conversation this morning, and of course looking at the idea of a national dialogue. Would it change anything or not? Let's hear from someone who believes it is not a good idea. Peter Montoto is head of capital markets at Grootes. Peter, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
Why do you believe a national dialogue is a bad idea?
Well, I think it's actually a quite dangerous shirking of leadership, basically, of a political and democratic system. I think there's this very odd belief, a bizarre belief even, that you can get all these very, very disparate entities and interest groups in a room to basically decide on a way forward. And I think it completely misunderstands what happened at the original CODESA, where you had two broad elements that were negotiating a sequencing and a timing of a transition in a lot of detail. Yes, there was a lot of complexity around that, but there was a slower path, obviously, or a path that didn't want to move versus the ANC and others who wanted, obviously, the transition to human rights and universal suffrage and the end of apartheid. This is far, far more complicated. There are thousands of overlapping issues where there isn't even an agreement on the basic facts, right? If people believe in budget constraints, people's understanding of how a modern economy works, these sorts of things. So I think it's a completely unrealistic and actually quite dangerous ask, where the job ultimately of political leadership in a democracy is to make choices between non-compatible desires of different interest groups.
Okay, but if we have such a deep crisis, or let me say a series of deep crises, and Omri Makwala has explained some of those, and if our politics isn't working, in his view it isn't, shouldn't we get people around a table and have a conversation? Do we really lose anything by doing that?
Oh, sure. We can have a nice conversation. There are lots of these conversations. There are endless conferences, NEDLAC meetings on these sorts of things every year. I mean, that's entirely fine, but it's not going to achieve very much. I think a lot of people forget there was a social compacting round in 2022 that I took part in for business, so I'm not here certainly representing anyone, very much my own opinion. At that time, some positive did come out. The business partnership came out of that. The work of NECOM and NLCC and other crisis interventions came out of that when government realised the depth of crisis and the need for change. But we're talking about much, much deeper things here going on. The way that parliamentary democracy works has just came up from your previous discussant, the way people view the tax base and what it's used for, particularly in relation to grants and some of these sorts of issues. These are much, much deeper and more complex issues that you can't really just all sit down in the room and decide.
Okay, it's a former president of the party still in power, so it's Thabo Mbeki who is making this point. And doesn't that show how deep the crisis is? I mean, that's an important point, where this is actually coming from. Someone who was both at CODESA and has a deep understanding of the state. I mean, we should surely take Mbeki's comments quite seriously.
Well, not particularly. I mean, I think it comes from this very traditional view in the political economy of the ANC, obviously, of the leader of whole society, as a 70% odd, party in terms of parliamentary take, and someone who's therefore able to guide an entire conversation. And let's not forget what he did in power was to make those difficult decisions. That was a hallmark of his presidency. That's why things moved forward relatively successfully in terms of investment and growth. And I think in a way, I think he's misunderstanding his own leadership when in government, actually. And what the party, if he's obviously viewing this in a party frame, needs to do is obviously provide that sort of leadership to the country in an election and see what happens, either this election or in 2029. But no, I mean, I think that's why I find the comments so sort of interesting and odd. Is it's actually the opposite, I think, of what happened under his presidency, when a lot of very difficult economic and other decisions were taken. Of course, also a lot of very controversial decisions as well on things like healthcare and other things.
Are there other solutions, other ways to fix the problems that we have that would both use the democracy that we have and would not involve a national dialogue? I mean, politicians are supposed to solve these problems. On a daily basis, we hear from people calling into SFM who suggest that those problems aren't being resolved. So then, are there other ways to do it?
Well, I think there are some components that can help the process. For instance, I think in our last social compacting efforts, civil society was completely sort of absent in any meaningful sort of way. Civil society has not come together. It's a continual complaint within NEDLAC. A lot of work needs to go on how you bring the voice of civil society to the table in a cohesive way, but also the lack of ideas. I mean, I think we've seen actually a huge death of ideas in terms of the union movement in particular. The union movement, even if one disagreed with them, used to have an amazing sort of research base and set of ideas they could bring to the table in debates, sort of 20 years ago. That sort of died as well. I think that would help the process as well to come along. And so yes, I think it's about ideas in the mix to one degree, but also we have plenty of ideas. If we take that point around parliamentary democracy and how it functions, huge amount of work, of course, done by Motlanthe, by Rolf Mayer and others in terms of reports that were sort of widely and largely expected. And now we've got into this sort of pickle, as we're going to see, obviously, in the upcoming election around how independent candidates work and all this sort of stuff. That work has been done, but was then sort of watered down by the political economy. You're not going to solve that when the best practice is on the table, by sitting in a room, I think. So I think it's about ideas, it's about capacity coming to the table as well, but also, as I said, ultimately a style of leadership.
Peter Montalto, thank you, Head of Capital Markets at Grootes. In a moment, well, not neutral necessarily, but let's just say an analytical view from Ibrahim Fakir on the question of a national dialogue. 19 minutes now to 9.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's been a very busy run all over Galuli's interchange this morning. The latest is a crash going north through the interchange up towards the Linksfield Road exit. And that traffic on the N3 heading into Edenvale from Bedfordview is quite heavily backed up. Expect some delays, leaving Germiston on the M2. Going to be asked to queue out towards the Heldon Ace interchange. Still plenty of traffic around the Crown. The Mike 1 from Goldreef City through to Smith Streets. Heavy, and behind that the M2 queuing up coming in from Joe Slovo Drive. Let's get you an update on Durban's M2 heading up towards the airport with big delays earlier this morning. Unchanged, really. You've got the roadworks and the collision scene between Gateway and Sabaya. So once you get to the Umhlanga exit, that's where you hit the backlog, and it is pretty heavily congested until you get past that scene. And all sorts of problems around Cape Town's M2 Highway Mowbray side this morning. Big crash on the way into town before Hospital Bend, just past Mowbray Main, and a pretty big collision. In fact, there may be two going out of town between Elizabeth Parkway and Mowbray Main. So you've got a really big delay of traffic on the N2 into the first crash from Roberts Bukwe all the way through to Hospital Bend. The N2 outbound collision holding traffic up through Hospital Bend and badly backing up traffic on the M3. That's currently back from sort of Wynberg Hill territory all the way through Newlands past UCT and into that congestion at the Hospital Bend interchange. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
8 minutes to 9. Well, we've heard of you in favour of a national dialogue. You've heard of you against it. This is your mediated conversation this morning here on SAFM. Ibrahim Fakir is a consultant election analyst at the Elections Institute of Southern Africa. Ibrahim, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Hi, morning, Stephen. Morning, listeners.
Before we get to whether or not this is a good idea, I'm incredibly struck by the fact that it is a former president who is from the party still in government who suggests that we need a national dialogue. What does that tell us about our situation and maybe our democracy at the moment?
Well, often as it is with President Mbeki, one is never quite sure what he means or what his motivations are, and there could be several of them. The one is, of course, we've got the seemingly intractable problems, which do, I think, require some form of dialogue. The other is people might think, considering what the polls are saying about the ANC and their own fears about losing complete authority over government, that it's some sort of route back into the back door. Now, of course, they'll be the largest party. They'll still remain influential one way or the other. But this is one way of, through the back door, ensuring that there is a grip on power. Now, Stephen, despite the fact that I said in the opener that maybe there is cause for dialogue. We've got some seemingly intractable problems which we don't appear to be able to solve. We've got a major crisis of representation and responsiveness. Our political parties in parliament are not doing the job. So what do? We need to resolve some of these things. And for that reason, there may be dialogue. But the thing about the dialogue is that we don't actually need dialogue. What we actually need is negotiations. When you have negotiations, you're actually striking deals. You're starting from a departure point that there is a fundamental point of difference. You're not just talking about stuff. You're putting a position on the table. You create a stake on the ground, and you move from that position, firstly. Secondly, premised on the idea that you've got deep divisions over how to resolve certain problems, you move towards a path of kind of striking agreements, and that's the second component, the striking of agreements. What are you going to do? Now, we've got a problem in the country in the sense that, if you think about compliance governance, there is none. What is there to say that even if you strike agreements, people are going to stick to it? So I'm a little bit bewildered as to why we need this dialogue or negotiation, because one would have thought that's why we elect Parliament. Now, of course, because Parliament and the parties that are sitting in Parliament appear to be so socially distant, and that's the ANC's language, they are so remote from some of the real problems on the ground. Our public policy problems appear almost irresolvable. There's a crisis of representation. They're not really putting anything on the ground in terms of resolving the major policy issues that are facing us: crime, unemployment, housing, transport, infrastructure. You can go through the entire list, and it almost appears as if our political elites, in collusion with the business elites, make no mistake, appear to be living in a parallel universe which the rest of us are not inhabiting.
Sure. So there are all sorts of things that happen in a national dialogue. But if we're going to have coalition governments, aren't we going to, in a way, over time, we heard from Professor Stephen Friedman yesterday, who made the point that over time we're probably going to have more and more smaller parties, and we won't necessarily have, an ANC-dominated or a DA-dominated coalition in national government or a council or wherever. So won't we be having the national dialogue inside these coalitions, these groups of parties, in a way, anyway, if you see what I mean, that more elements of society would be represented in whatever kind of government there is?
Stephen, you've got 7 metropolitan municipalities, by far the largest concentration of economic activity, population, redistributive potential, and you've got coalition governments there. You've got major, as you call it, representation and inclusion. Why, despite that diversity, despite that major inclusion, just look at national parliament. You're talking about 13 political parties. Guess what? The bottom 10% of the electorate are represented by 9 political parties. So what is the point of the inclusion? It's not as if these guys are really contributing significantly in any way to resolving some of the problems, number one. Number two, are they demanding or are they able to demand a certain level of accountability? Are they exercising any meaningful degree of oversight? So who are they representing? When you talk about this inclusion, what is the history of this been since 2016? They've been compacting amongst themselves as a political elite. They've been making decisions about how to distribute the spoils of position, and then they've been having a bun fight over the control of public spending, over resources, over procurement, over public contracting. So if that's going to persist, despite the widespread inclusion, diversity, and representation, what is the point going to be? So here's my argument. My argument is that negotiation and dialogue are absolutely vital aspect of democracy, but they have to translate into democratic government, where in the process of government, all of these diversely represented parties are actually fulfilling a function beyond mere representation. The democratic governance requires a degree of oversight and accountability because that's what makes institutions work. Now, if the institutions are not working, as Parliament hasn't been, they even missed deadlines and were so late in crafting what would be the overarching architecture of the electoral system. Why would we think that these people are serious about resolving the problem? So, on the one hand, there's a need for the dialogue. On the other hand, you've got all the institutions which are supposed to be conducting this negotiation and dialogue: Parliament, social compacting, NEDLEX, working groups. But they're solving nothing. So what is the point? Unless Mr. Beck is believing that we're in such a moment of societal transition, and we do have major problems, that maybe we need to negotiate these things, our way out of it. Fair enough. But who is going to do the negotiating? Are they going to replicate the same representative and responsiveness problems that we face in Parliament now? Because, sure, there's political parties which don't represent significant constituencies in society. For example, business. Labour, we know, has been on the decline. They're not terribly well organized and have lost a voice inside institutions. So, sure, we need those voices at the table. But who's going to elect them? Who's based on what mandate are they going to carry forward positions in a negotiation? What are they going to be prepared to give away, and on whose behalf?
Ibrahim Fakir, thank you very much indeed. Consultant election analyst at the Elections Institute of Southern Africa. Really do appreciate the time. My thanks also to Peter Montalto, Head of Capital Markets at Grootes, and Omri Mokwale, an ANC veteran member and a political commentator. Well, thank you for being with us on SAFM Sunrise today. Been a busy day. Kathy is next from Doof, from Stanza, and Paul, Melissa, myself. Look after yourself. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, Nehau against suspension of the Secretary to Parliament and 6 victims identified in George building collapse. Good morning. Trade union Nehau in Parliament says it's against any attempt to suspend the Secretary to Parliament, Xolile George. It says there are attempts to effect the suspension before the end of the 6th Parliament. The union says it supports how George has transformed the institution since he became Secretary in 2022. It says George rejected plans to erect a modular structure for Parliament while the restoration of the damaged buildings was underway. The structures would allegedly have cost 600 million rand. Nehau chairperson in Parliament, Stembiso Tembe.
What we heard is that when he's suspended, they will then appoint one of the secretaries of the 2 houses. And that person that will be appointed will then be entrusted with the responsibility to relook at the issue of the modular structure. It means they will revert to that particular issue that he stopped and build that modular structure. And we want to say, in terms of the investigation report, as a union, we are aware that not everyone that was implicated by the report is facing the consequences as well. We know that there are people that were implicated by the report that are not part of those that are facing the consequences.
The George Building Municipality, or rather George Municipality, says 6 of the 32 workers who died when a partially built building collapsed last week have been identified. Municipal spokesperson Chantal Edwards says they are setting up plans to speed up the identification process. Yesterday marked a week since the disaster. Edwards says 20 workers are still unaccounted for, while 12 others are in hospital.
Fingerprints, DNA testing and photographs of unique markings such as tattoos and clothing items are some of the methods used to identify the deceased. Forensic pathology services are not limited to the Victoria Street disaster in George, but also include other cases that happen on a daily basis. It is now confirmed that 6 of the deceased have been positively identified, and this information has been through the system. We are experiencing difficulties in obtaining accurate names of individuals missing or deceased due to the building collapse. We urgently request families who have lost contact with their loved ones to come to the George Civic Centre on York Street.
Please note the following story contains graphic details which could upset sensitive listeners, including children. Some Sheldon village residents at Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga are calling for justice after the brutal killing of a 2-year-old girl in the area. The toddler was allegedly burnt with hot water by his stepfather and later succumbed to the burn wounds at a hospital. Community member and Better Residents Association leader Delta Mukwena says they want both the mother and stepfather behind bars.
No one is behind bars now. We went to the police station to verify whether there is a police case or not. Then we found that no, there's no police case. We requested some of the delegates to go to the mother of the victim. So then the mother of the victim must come and explain why she didn't even open the police case. It was the police that then they advised us to request the mother of the child to come and open the case.
Civil society organisation Not In My Name says there's no political will to effectively deal with crime, especially in townships. This follows the killing of 5-year-old Itebucho Junior Palane during a hijacking incident in Shoshanguve, north of Pretoria. Not In My Name Secretary General Themba Masango says government has to increase visible policing, as was seen during the COVID-19 lockdowns, in order to successfully fight crime.
When we had the lockdown, we had police in every single area, and people were policed to make sure that they don't buy alcohol and they don't jump the street People were closed at home. Now we want the same type of activity, strength, action to be reinforced, especially in township areas, in hotspots like Soshanguve, Inanda, Mamelodi, places like Guguletu, Khayelitsha and Cape Town, the Cape Flats. They do have the resources. In Gauteng particularly, we've got the manpower now with Amapanya or Rapanyas and Lesotho. You should have people patrolling the streets 24/7.
In election-related news, DA leader John Steenhuisen says despite the Northern Cape being rich in minerals, its residents are living in poverty. The DA is hoping to win control of the province in the May 29th general elections. Steenhuisen was electioneering in the province and has urged those attending the party rally in Uppington to vote for the DA.
Uppington is a place that should be a tourist mecca in South Africa. It's in a terrible state because of the lack of investment in infrastructure, the contamination going into the Orange River, which is affecting a lot of the farming operations because there's no basic services, capital budget being spent on sewage treatment works and the like. And it's in a terrible state. And the longer this continues, the longer the people of the Northern Cape are going to suffer with the worst unemployment rates in the country. And we need to do something about that. And this election offers citizens a chance to bring that change.
Recapping the top story, trade union Ehau in Parliament says it's against any attempt to suspend the Secretary to Parliament, Xolile George. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
If you're going to deal with, at least say, here is exactly the problem we have. This is why we have to make the trade-offs. Don't make this in some hidden room and not explain it. You have to have at the level of leadership the courage to engage your community, the nation, if you are the president, the university community, and often they might not accept it. But you have to, in the principle of transparent leadership, be able to say, this is what the problem is, these are the options, this is what I've decided for these reasons. Be transparent about it. Act with integrity. Live what in your personal life, what you're talking about in your this thing. You can't say, I'm going to do one thing and do the direct opposite. One of the things that I've complained about in Fees Must Fall in the University Challenge is we've had political leaders in their state capacity sitting and speaking every single year about how we need to be measured, how we need to be prudent, and they've been actually cutting down subsidy. And then they sat in their political act on political platforms and they've all been talking about free education. Well, if you believed in free education, why the hell were you deciding cutting subsidies when you were in your state position? It seems to me you have to act with a sense of integrity. And if you don't do that, that creates the kind of crisis we're in. So for me, those are the four fundamental principles that I think have to lie at the core of any understanding of leadership.
And that is Professor Adam Habib, the former Vice Chancellor and Principal of Wits University, in our opening motivation. Good morning. I am in Durban at the ICC, at the Durban ICC. We're coming to you live from South Africa's playground, Durban, as it plays host of the Africa Travel Indaba, the ATI. The conference is live at the Inkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center. It started yesterday, the 13th, until Friday, the 16th of May, 2024. We're covering day 2 of the event under the theme Unlimited Africa. The trade show is highlighting the widest variety of Africa's best tourism products and services. It affords delegates an opportunity to acquaint themselves with the exciting travel experiences on offer with a view of forging dynamic tourism partnerships. Today, the Africa Trade Indaba will be focusing on tourism investment and plays host to the National Tourism Career Expo. With that, welcome to the Talking Point, everybody. My name, as you can hear, is not Kathy Motlatlana. It is Khomotso KG Mweketi. I'm here today for Kathy. It's Tuesday, the 14th of May. It's gorgeous where we are. The weather was a bit weird for Durban when I landed yesterday afternoon, but Durban is looking really good this morning. We're SFM leading the conversation. Join, please, whenever you want on 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032, the SMS line 41391. That's 41391, though that will come through to you at 150. Please send short, quick, to the point voice notes on our WhatsApp line 061 410 4107. And we are on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. We are at SFM Radio, hashtag SFM Talking Point. I'm here with Kanya and Mbusi, and we're all looking brightly and sparkly this morning. So coming up on the program today, we open the lines for you. Of course, it's 15 days to go to voting day. Have you even decided how you're going to do it? I've decided I'm going to be one of those people that wake up at actually 4 o'clock in the morning, so that when the stalls open, it's 7, hey? It opens at 7. I'm there. I'm one of the first ones with a fresh cup of coffee. I do it and I get it over and done with, and I spend the day watching TV. Yay! That's what I'm going to do on voting day. So I hope, you're getting close to deciding what it is that you're going to be, where you're going to be putting your cross, and you've acquainted yourself with all things that relate to the 3 ballots that come with this year's national elections. We're going to open the lines for you. It's the National Roundtable to hear what is on your mind. It's South Africa, no shortage of issues. There's plenty to even talk about regards tourism. They're saying this very event that I'm attending is expected to make for the KZN government about approximately 180 million rand. That is the current projection of 180 million rand. And it would be interesting to hear whether there are growth projections from, what happened when it was previously hosted, and, who they have anew that hasn't been here before, and what their intentions are for this particular one. Because there's no point to hosting any event if it's not always on an upward trajectory, because it has to show its own growth. Because tourism, as you know, is South Africa's biggest sector, and it's the most important sector that we have. So we're going to talk all things tourism. We'll open the lines for you. You can talk tourism too if you want to on the 086 000